Good evening. Let me get my volume up and my brightness. Okay. Good evening, everyone. I see Trustee Panas, Trustee Lara, Trustee Phillips. Great. Okay, so we can get started. Mr. Duffy is going to be joining us in a bit. So I would like to call to order the October 6, 2020 regular meeting of the West Contra Costa Unified School District Board of Education. I hope everyone joining us today is doing well and that everyone at home is in good health. We continue to meet via Zoom for all district and board meetings as authorized by the Governor's Emergency Executive Order issued on March 17, 2020. The West Contra Costa Unified School District will conduct board meetings via video teleconference until further notice. Please remember that if you have any comments for a closed session that you press *9 if you're calling in with your phone and then *6 to unmute your microphone. If you are using the Zoom app, you can press the raise my hand on Zoom. So before we go to closed session, is there any public comment for any of the closed session items? I don't see any hands raised. Okay. So we will recess the closed session and we will return back for the open session portion of our meeting at 6:30. Thank you, everyone. See you right now. Bye. Hi, everyone. Good evening. Welcome. I see a lot of our staff present. Trustee Panas, Trustee Cotton Blake, Trustee Phillips, Trustee Garcia Avila. Welcome. Let's see. Superintendent Duffy just joined us. Great, so we can go ahead and get started. Trustee Lara should be joining us momentarily. There she is. And Trustee Cuevas notified us that she will be joining us a few minutes late today in about 15 minutes. So we will welcome her when she arrives. Again, welcome and thank you for joining us. I would like to call to order our October 7, 2020 regular meeting of the West Contra Costa Unified School District Board of Education. I hope everyone at home is doing well and is in good health. We continue to meet via Zoom for all district and board meetings. As authorized by the Governor's Emergency Executive Order issued on March 17, 2020, the West Contra Costa Unified School District Board of Education will continue to conduct board meetings via video teleconference until further notice. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Again, thank you for joining us tonight. I hope that each of you is having a good first week of October. October can many times feel like a very long month for students, their families, and educators. I hope each of you has a month characterized by the empathy and support of everyone around you, with days highlighted by the small yet meaningful moments of appreciation. Thank you to every family and educator for supporting each of our students during distance learning. I would like to share some basic instructions regarding how we're going to be using Zoom today and involve members of the public. We'll be having live public comment via Zoom. This may result in some uncomfortable situations, so we hope you will bear with us as we navigate any issues that may come up. It is our hope for members of the public to be able to participate and share their public comment with the board in a space conducive to a respectful public forum for all. During the meeting, all board members and the superintendent will be on video throughout the board meeting. Staff members are also present and will be on video when they present. Members of the public will not be on video and will be muted throughout the meeting unless they have raised their hand for public comment. In order to comment on an agenda item at tonight's meeting, members of the public should raise their hand by pressing the raise your hand button on the Zoom app, or by pressing *9 by telephone when the board reaches the item on which you want to comment. If you are calling in with your phone, when your name is called, press *6 to unmute your phone. When we get to the item, a member of district staff will call your name. Comments will be restricted to the amount of time allocated by board policy. Your hand must be raised before the first public comment is read on an agenda item. Before the first public comment is shared on an agenda item. After the first comment is shared, there will be no additional public comments accepted after So raise your hand as soon as we get to the item so that you can have public comment. In order to be recognized to speak, you must be using a first and a last name. Thank you. Now we will share the same directions in Spanish. Para hacer un comentario sobre el artículo en la agenda, se le pide al público que por favor levante su mano al presionar el botón de levantar la mano en la aplicación de Zoom, o al presionar estrella 9 por teléfono cuando lleguemos al artículo para el cual usted quiera hacer su comentario. Si está llamando por teléfono, por favor presione estrella 6 para prender el micrófono de su teléfono. Cuando lleguemos a ese artículo en la agenda, un personal del distrito escolar llamará su nombre. Los comentarios serán restringidos al tiempo asignado por las normas de la mesa directiva. Su mano debe estar levantada antes de que el primer comentario se haga en ese artículo. Después de que el primer comentario sea leído, no se aceptarán más comentarios. Entonces, levante su mano o presione 9 en cuanto lleguemos al artículo para cualquiera comentar, para ser reconocido para comentar. También debe usar un nombre completo con un primer nombre y un apellido. Gracias. I also want to note that members of the public can translate the meeting agenda webpage by clicking on the button labeled English with a globe next to it to translate the meeting agenda into multiple languages. And we have interpretation services available via Zoom by clicking on the globe icon on the Zoom app. Thank you. Superintendent Duffy, can we please have roll call?
Yes. President Hernandez-Jarvis.
Present.
Trustee Lara.
Present.
Trustee Phillips.
Trustee Phillips present. Thank
Trustee Panis.
Present.
Trustee Cuevas is absent. Trustee Cotton Blake.
Present.
Trustee Garcia Avila.
Present.
That's our group.
Thank you, Superintendent Duffy. Do we have a report out of closed session?
We do not.
Thank you. Our next item on the agenda is agenda review and adoption.
President Hernandez-Jarvis, just a point of order.
Mhm.
We took 2 votes in closed session, so we do have a report out.
Thank you, Trustee Phillips, for that point of order. I actually want to check with the superintendent if there was no action that came out as a result of those direct votes. Is that something that should be reported out with this? Because usually we report it out when there is a vote taken, and the outcome of that is reported out if there is a direct action to that.
My understanding from our closed session discussion, and perhaps we have to recess back to closed session, is that the board asked to revisit these items again in 2 weeks. So no final action was taken at that time.
Mm-hmm.
President Hernandez-Jarvis, what I recall
Phillips?
is the superintendent asked us to revisit, but we voted twice, and those votes should be reported out. And if we have to go back into closed session and ask legal counsel if we have to report out actual votes, which we always do, I'm fine with that.
Thank you, Trustee Phillips. Superintendent Duffy, I think that for clarity and transparency, I would recommend for us to check with legal counsel. I do not believe that they need to be reported out because there was no direct action. But again, I think we definitely need to check with legal counsel because it seems to be a question about this.
Okay, we can check during the meeting, and we can do 2 things. We could either recess to closed session right now, work to clean it up as quickly as we can, or we can recess to closed session at the end of the meeting, which we have done before, and then report out from there. So please let me know what you'd like to do or which the board would like to do.
Thank you. Trustee Phillips?
My preference would be for us to actually recess into closed session now, because 5 hours or 6 hours from now, people are not going to actually be in the Zoom to hear the report.
Thank you, Trustee Phillips. I would personally like for us to recess into closed session at the end of the meeting, but I hear what Trustee Phillips is saying, and I think for the sake of transparency in the public, that is with us right now in this public meeting, I think that it would make sense to recess to closed session very briefly, check with legal counsel and come back out to let the public know whether something needs to be reported out or if the votes that were taken and there was no action from that are fine without reporting until we actually see these items again. Superintendent Duffy, were you able to contact legal counsel?
We're working.
This is Tony.
but-
I am talking to him right now.
We still need to, I mean, if the discussion would need to happen in closed session, I would suggest we do it there. And I'm happy if that's what the board wants to just set up a quick closed session call for us.
I think that we should do that. I think that we should do it as quickly as possible so that we can resume the public open session meeting. And I would say that I would want us to be back out here by 6:50 at the latest. Since this should be a question of, is it reported out or not? Okay, can we please use the same Google Meet link that we use for closed session?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. And I apologize to the public. We want to clear this up to see if it's something that we do have to report out and we actually didn't have a clear answer right now. So we're going to go back, recess to closed session for the next 10 minutes at the most, and then come back outside for open session. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Are staying with us right now. I apologize that we took that unexpected recess to closed session, and I appreciate Trustee Phillips for bringing up the question of if there was anything to report out. Mr. Duffy, would you like to share with the public?
Yes, we do not have anything to report out this evening.
Thank you. Again, thank you, Trustee Phillips, for helping us double check and to have transparency with our community members. Thank you. Okay, so we were at B5, agenda review and adoption. Are there any changes to the agenda? Any suggestions that trustees have?
President Hernandez-Jarvis,
Hannes?
I would like to pull C1. And then also, I'd suggest that we pull E1. That presentation didn't get up till midday. And I didn't have much of a chance to look at it. I doubt the public did.
Thank you, Trustee Panas. And you said, Trustee Panas, you said tabled E1 or you said pulled E1?
Well, table it. Yes, table it.
Okay. Trustee Phillips?
And pull C1.
Pull C1. Got it. Thank you. Trustee Phillips?
C5 and C6, please.
C5 and C6?
Yes, ma'am.
C6. Thank you. Okay. So is there excuse me, is there a motion to adopt the agenda with the following changes? Item C1, C5, and C6 pulled, and item E1 tabled.
So moved.
And Trustee Panas, is it okay? I know you said so moved, but tabling it to the next meeting, is that, okay, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Trustee Lara. Can we please take a vote?
Patton Blake, yes.
Garcia Avila, yes.
Panis, yes.
Phillips, yes.
Lara, yes.
Hernandez Jarvis, yes. Motion passes unanimously with Trustee Cuevas absent to adopt the agenda with the changes suggested. And trustees, you actually did the turn-taking order perfectly how I had it written out, and I had forgot to share it. So thank you. Trustee Cuevas will begin, but she's absent right now. So when she joins us, we can go ahead and continue. Thank you. Okay, so now we have the approval of minutes. We have 3 sets of minutes. Item B6, September 9th, September 16th, and September 23, 2020. Is there a motion for the September 9th minutes, or are there any corrections that trustees would like to make?
I'll move the September 9 minutes.
A second.
Seconded by Trustee Lara. Can we please take a vote?
Patton Blake, yes.
Garcia Avila,
Oh, my bad. My internet's connection is bad. Yes.
Panis, yes.
Phillips, yes.
Lara, yes.
Hernandez Jarvis, yes. Motion passes unanimously with Trustee Cuevas absent to approve the minutes from the September 9, 2020 meeting. The next set of minutes to approve minutes from September 16, 2020 board meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Moved by Trustee. Thank you. Seconded by Trustee Lara. Can we please take a vote?
Cotton Blake, yes.
Garcia Avila, yes.
Panis, yes.
Phillips, yes.
Lara, yes.
Hernandez Jarvis, yes. Motion passes unanimously to approve the September 16, 2020 minutes, and Trustee Cuevas is absent for this vote as well. Then last set of minutes is from September 23, 2020. Are there any changes or suggestions to correct anything in those minutes, or is there a motion to approve them as they are?
So moved.
Moved by Trustee Bennett,
Second.
seconded by Trustee Lara. Can we please take a vote?
Cotton Blake, yes.
Garcia Avila, yes.
Panis, yes.
Phillips, yes.
Lara, yes.
Hernandez Jarvis, yes. Motion passes unanimously to approve the set of minutes from the September 23rd board meeting with Trustee Cuevas absent. Next, we have a set of resolutions. Actually, we have B7, B8, B9, B10, and B11. I would like to suggest that the board only read one of them, and if there is consensus around the board which one we want to read, or if there's one that you absolutely want to read aloud and share with the community that way, please do let us know. Resolution number 26, 2021, in support of National Principals Month, October 1st through to 31st, 2020. Mr. Duffy, did you want to say, or Mr. Jordan, did you want to say, make the comments that are in the précis before we have a motion?
Sure. I didn't know which one we were reading, but if we were going to read one, I think this is actually a good one to read. And that one so be happy to read that unless one of our trustees or student trustees would like to read it as the resolution will read of the 5 of them.
And Mr. Duffy, I wasn't saying that that's the one we're going to read. I was asking you to read the
Okay.
comment on the page.
Sure, absolutely. Well, it is National Principals Month, and next week is actually the week of the school administrator. The principals in our district have done an absolutely fabulous and fantastic job leading schools in such a tough environment right now, innovating, creating, being there for students, families. They've just been absolutely incredible. You're going to see some of them featured in our community and staff messages going out this week. We're going to get to hear from more of them. You'll see more features next week during the week of the school administrator. We couldn't be proud of our principals. It's an amazing, amazing job having done it. I loved it, and it's incredibly difficult. So we thank all of our principals for all they're doing every single day. So thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Duffy. And I would like to, if it's okay with the rest of the board members, if the student representatives will get to choose which resolution is read tonight, to communicate with the members of the public too who are with us right now. This resolution is in support of National Principals Month, October 1st through 31st of this year. The next resolution is in recognition of National Bullying Prevention Month. The following resolution is in recognition of National School Lunch Week. The next one is in recognition of Indigenous Peoples Day. And the last resolution is the week of the school administrator, October 11th through the 17th. So if our board members, if student representatives have a specific resolution that they would like to read, please let me know at this moment so that we can, see if we're going to read this resolution or one of the following ones. Trustee Phillips?
Can I just make a request that we do 2, and that Indigenous Peoples Day is one of them, because we normally recognize groups, and I don't want one of the other resolutions to be chosen and that's not one of them. So that's all.
That's very important. Thank you. Okay, and I see Trustee Garcia Avila also giving the thumbs up for that one. So I think that that's definitely one we're going to read then. And if somebody would like to read that, please let us know. And that is 2 resolutions away from this one. And so if somebody would like to read this one, or if there's another one that you think we should read, please let us know right now so that we can take the correct steps. So is there a motion to approve the National Principals Month, October 1st through 31st?
So moved.
Moved by Trustee Banas. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Trustee Lara. Can we please take a vote?
Cotton Blake, yes.
Garcia Avila, yes.
Canis, yes.
Phillips, yes.
Lara, yes.
Hernandez Jarvis, yes. Motion passes unanimously with Trustee Cuevas absent. And I want to thank again on behalf of the school board and everybody in the district, each principal for all the work that you do. Pre-COVID and during the pandemic, you're also doing so much for all of our students and being the backbone to leading our school sites and making sure that our teachers are supported. So thank you for your work. So we have the next item, Resolution 27, 2021. In recognition of National Bullying Prevention Month. Mr. Duffy or Mr. Jordan, would you like to share a few words from the Precinct?
Sure. October is also a National Bullying Prevention Month. And as part of that resolution, we did include digital citizenship there, which right now is incredibly important as we are in the digital world 100% of the time. So the importance of being kind to one another, making sure we're really vigilant about any aggressive or bullying behavior is essential. So this resolution speaks to our support and our consciousness around bullying and digital citizenship.
Thank you, Superintendent Duffy. And I think that this is definitely something that is a very important resolution for students, for adults as well. And I think that for students, especially in this cyber virtual world that they're learning in right now, I think that it makes sense to read this one aloud. Would one of our trustees like to read this resolution?
I'll read it if neither of our student trustees want to read it.
Trustee Panas, thank you.
Okay. West Contra Costa Unified School District Resolution number 27, 2021 in recognition of National Bullying Prevention Week. Whereas school bullying has become an increasingly significant problem in the United States, and whereas close to 5 million, or 20% of the students ages 12 through 16 in the United States have been bullied in some fashion, and an estimated 160,000 students in kindergarten through 12th grade miss school every day for fear of being bullied. And whereas bullying can take many forms, including verbal, physical, cyberbullying, and occur in cyberspace and can occur in many places on and off school grounds. And whereas the West Contra Costa Unified School District supports the right of students and staff to attend schools that are safe and free from violence, harassment, bullying, and discrimination. And whereas the month of October is National Bullying Prevention Month, a campaign in response to the need to raise awareness of bullying that provides schools and communities with an opportunity to educate students, families, and others about their role in bullying prevention. And whereas as part of the month, we recognize the first Monday of October 5th as World Bullying Prevention to stomp out bullying. And we recognize October 11th as National Coming Out Day, celebrating coming out as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, LGBTQ+ questioning, or as an ally. And whereas the district adopted a Digital Citizenship Month resolution on October 17th, 2018 to raise cyberbullying awareness, and included curriculum interwoven with digital literacy across all grade levels from kindergarten through 12th. And whereas the West Contra Costa Unified School District also recognizes Digital Citizenship Week this year on October 19 to 23 to help students, families, and educators understand and think critically about what they see online, the benefits and risks of sharing information in the digital world, and the effects of cyberbullying, and how to become great digital citizens. And therefore, be it resolved that the West Contra Costa Unified School District supports the goals of National Bullying Prevention Month and will work with a broad spectrum of local community stakeholders, parents, students, teachers, and staff to develop, implement, and monitor policies and programs that foster and support a positive school climate free from harassment, bullying, discrimination, and violence. And be it further resolved, the Board of Education of the West Contra Costa Unified School District proclaims its unified commitment to the education and prevention of bullying within our communities and schools, exploring solutions to the problem, and offering support and raising awareness, and recognized in the month of October 2020 as National Bullying Prevention Month, passed and adopted by the Board of Education of the West Contra Costa Unified School District on the 7th day of October 2020. I'll move that resolution.
Thank you, Trustee Panas. Motion made by Trustee Panas. Thank you for reading that resolution. Is there a second?
I second the resolution.
Seconded by Trustee Phillips. Can we please take a vote?
Martin Blake, yes.
Garcia Avila, yes.
Hannah, yes.
Phillips, yes.
Lara, yes.
Hernandez Jarvis, yes. Motion passes unanimously with Trustee Cuevas absent. The next resolution that we have is resolution number 28, 2021, in recognition of National Schools Lunch Week.
So I'll come in and do this one really quick. Our wellness policy focuses on the key connection between students' health and academic achievement. Since the pandemic, our nutrition services team has been out every day serving meals. We passed the 3 million mark before we started school. We are now within about a week to a week and a half from the 4 million mark for meals. Every year, we do focus on National School Meals Week with this resolution. And we also want to continue to make the request to all families to complete the application form for free and reduced lunch and those benefits. Right now, the benefits will continue through Christmas, at which point it'll revert back to the normal program unless there's an additional waiver. During this time, we don't want any students to go hungry. And so we appreciate the board passing this resolution in support of National School Lunch Week.
Thank you, Dr. Walt. And I want to reiterate just the amazing work that everybody has done to make sure that students are fed, and everybody that has volunteered and works in our district to make sure that we have lunches and breakfasts and dinners for our kids. Thank you. Is there a motion?
I'll move resolution 28, 2021 in recognition of National School Lunch Week.
Is there a second? I second that motion. Can we please take a vote?
Martin Blake, yes.
Garcia Avila, yes.
Hannah, yes.
Phillips, yes.
Lara, yes.
Hernandez Jarvis, yes. Motion passes unanimously with Trustee Cuevas absent. To approve the resolution in recognition of National School Lunch Week. The next resolution is in recognition of Indigenous Peoples Day. Would one of our trustees like to read this resolution?
I can read it.
Thank you, Trustee Garcia Avila.
Okay. Whereas the idea of Indigenous Peoples Day was first proposed in 1977 by a delegation of Native nations, the United Nations sponsored International Conference of Discrimination Against Indigenous Populations in the Americas. And whereas an effort to reveal a more accurate historical record of the discovery of the United States of America, representatives from 120 Indigenous nations at the First Continental Conference over 500 years of Indian resistance unanimously passed a resolution to transform Columbus Day into an occasion to recognize the contributions of Indigenous people despite enormous efforts against Native nations. And whereas West Contra Costa Unified School District recognizes Indigenous people and their accomplishments and contributions past and present, and whereas WCCUSD recognizes West Contra Costa County is built upon the homelands and villages of Indigenous people such as Ohlone, I'm so sorry if I butcher this, but Miwok and Yukuts, there you go. And whereas WCCUSD recognizes Indigenous people continue their contribution to our modern society with the largest population of Native Americans residing in California, and whereas honoring Christopher Columbus, who did not contribute to science and inflicted lasting historical trauma to Indigenous people, sending the wrong message to our children, and whereas there are countless movements around the world and the United States at the present time by Indigenous people to protect the land, fighting against climate change, fighting against climate destroying projects and build valuable cultural systems. And whereas the European settlers were aided in their survival by the teachings of the country's first inhabitants and the contributions of the Native Americans to this nation's government, history and cultural are as numerous and varied as the tribes themselves. And whereas the California Education Code, section 5124.5, specifically calls for instruction in social sciences to include the study of the role and contributions of Native Americans to economic, political, and social development in California and the nations, with particular emphasis on portraying the role of Native Americans in contemporary society. And whereas the history social science framework for California public schools to kindergarten through grade 12 states that the history curriculum of community, state, region, nation, and world must reflect the experiences of men and women of different racial, religions, and ethnic groups, must be integrated at every level. Now, therefore, it be resolved that the Board of Education of West Contra Costa Unified School District proclaims the second Monday in October as Indigenous Peoples Day, and be it further resolved that resources and training will be made available to teachers on appropriate ways to teach about history, struggles, and accomplishments of Indigenous people. Passed and adopted by Board of Education of West Contra Costa Unified School District on the 7th day of October 2020 by the following vote.
Thank you, Trustee Garcia Avila. Is there a motion to approve this
I'll
resolution?
move Resolution 29, 2021 in recognition of Indigenous Peoples' Day.
I second that.
Great. Can we please take a vote?
Cotton Blake, yes.
Garcia Avila, yes.
Annis, yes.
Phillips, yes.
Lara, yes.
Hernandez Jarvis, yes. The motion passes unanimously to pass resolution number 29, 2021 in recognition of Indigenous Peoples' Day. Trustee Cuevas is absent, and I think every year Trustee Cuevas has shared the importance of this day and the importance of this resolution. So I just want to echo that as well and acknowledge it, that she's an advocate and an avid supporter of this resolution. Thank you. Our next item is B11, resolution number 39, 2021, Week of the School Administrator, October 11th through the 17th, 2020.
And related to the Principals Month, this celebrates all of our school administrators. Next week is the week of the school administrator. As I mentioned before, we'll be doing some showcasing and highlighting of the work of our school administrators, and we are just absolutely impressed with their work every day. So thank you to all of our school administrators.
Thank you, Superintendent Duffy. Is there a motion to approve this resolution?
I'll move Resolution number 39, 2021, Week of the School Administrator, October 11 to 17, 2020.
I second that motion. Can we please take a vote?
Cotton Blake, yes.
Garcia Avila, yes.
Annis, yes.
Phillips, yes.
Lara, yes.
Hernandez Jarvis, yes. Motion passes again unanimously with Trustee Cuevas absent. And thank you again to every single school administrator for your work and your support of each child in our district. Thank you. And before we go to public comment for B12, I want to make sure that I provide a few moments of space to Dr. Wolt. He requested that he wanted to share some comments with the public, and I want to acknowledge that request and have give him a chance to share that with the public. Thank you.
So thank you, President Hernandez Jarvis. Tonight, I apologize to the board because yesterday in a meeting, I made a comment that was offensive to some of the people in that meeting. It doesn't matter whether it's offensive to one person or 50 people. We need to take responsibility in this world when we make comments that are hurtful or offensive, even when we don't know and our intent wasn't that way. We have to be able to own that and have a respectful place. Immediately, I am really pleased with our culture now that one of the individuals called me out on it and said, hey, that was not an appropriate comment. I immediately apologized, but more so, I want to thank that person for that space, that they felt comfortable enough to talk to somebody that is higher in the organization to say, hey, what you're doing is not right. That's the work that we want in this organization. We want people to be held accountable for their actions, take responsibility. And when we make a mistake, genuinely own that mistake and move forward together. And so tonight I apologize to the board that I made a mistake in making a comment that could be deemed offensive. I'm learning from that, and I'm going to stay committed to making sure that we have a safe space in this organization where anyone that has a concern knows that they can have a voice, that their voice will be heard, and that we will work to improve together. So I want to thank President Hernandez-Jarvis for allowing me to say that. I want to specifically apologize to anyone I offended. I meant no harm. I really, really feel horrible that I could even make a comment that would offend anyone. And I want us to learn from this, and hopefully in the future, as we have that, have a space to talk about things and work together. Thank you, board, for allowing me the moment to speak.
Thank you, Dr. Wald, for expressing that with our community. I think that, like you mentioned, we are getting to a space in our organization where we're starting to create these spaces to actually speak about, you know, what we need to improve and recognize the mistakes that are made and recognize how to move forward and address them and fix it so that we can prevent, you know, things like this to occur. So thank you for your sincere expression and apology to let everybody know. Thank you. So now we would like to invite members of the public to share their public comments with us. Our next item is B12, WCCUSD Public Comment. Again, press the *9 on your phone if you're dialing in, and then *6 when you're called to unmute your phone. If you're on the Zoom app, you press the raise your hand button to raise the little blue hand. If it's 10 or less speakers, it will be 3 minutes maximum. And we do have a lot of items on the agenda, so I would urge our community members to help move through the meeting productively while we also listen to your ideas and concerns.
And President Hernandez-Jarvis, just a reminder that they need to have a first and last name to be called on.
Thank you, Mr. Aurelio.
So as of right now, I only see 2 hands.
So we may begin with 3 minutes.
Okay. The first speaker will be Estela de Paz. And, oops. Excuse me. Sorry, a little technical difficulty. Ms. Paz, are you able to unmute?
Oh yeah, I can unmute. I'm sorry, you were giving me control. Thank you so much.
All right, sorry.
Hi, good evening, President Hernandez-Jarvis, board members and staff. Like Mr. Aurelio said, I'm Estela de Paz. I'm the School Site Council Chair for Hercules High School. I'm also a member of the Celebrate Filipino Independence Committee in Hercules. I'm here to share with you an often forgotten and rarely shared part of our California history. Knowing who we are as a people unites us, strengthens us as a community. So, did you know that October is in fact the Filipino American History Month? Yep, it is. On October 18th, 1587, October 15th, 1587, that is 33 years before the Pilgrims landed on Plymouth Rock in 1620, Filipinos landed in Upper California. This is what we now know as Morro Bay. They were crews of the Nuestra Senora de Buenas Esperanza. In California, Filipino American History Month was first recognized statewide in 2006 when the California Department of Education placed it on its celebration calendar. Nationally, on October 2009, the Senate of the 11th 111th Congress passed a resolution recognizing Filipino American History Month. In November of 2009, the following month, Congress passed a resolution doing the same. There are many other celebrations and recognitions happening in our state right now. I'm urging the West Contra Costa Board to also recognize October as Filipino American History Month. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. DePaz. Thank you for bringing that to our attention, and I wholeheartedly support that. And I think everyone on our board supports that well. We'll look into putting that on our next agenda. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Zilan Harrison.
Thank you.
Let's see, Ms. Harrison, you are now able to unmute.
I'm unmuted now.
Yep.
Thank you. Good evening, board. How you guys doing this evening? So good. Well, I had requested as the asset chair to have the budget because we were concerned about what was going on for Black students in the district. And part of the resolution is that the district would work with us regarding how funds were spent for our children. And we did thank you, board, for, making sure that request happened. So we did receive the budget. However, it's still very unclear on how the data is being used to track success for our students, how the data is being used to measure the outcomes. And I was just in a meeting yesterday, and I was told that there is no data to track Black children success. And that concerned me because that is our lowest performing group. And why wouldn't this district have a way to track that already in place? And they know, and this has been going on for several years, that Black students have been the lowest performing group. So having clear data is very important. And I'm requesting that this governing board direct Superintendent Dovey to have the head of every department provide to the Office of African American Student Achievement the requested data that we need with the staff, the students, making sure that they're getting the things they need during the pandemic. And we need to get this in a timely manner. We're already 5 to 6 weeks into school and we don't have data on the lowest performing group in our district. This is a business to educate children. So if you're in business to do this, your lowest performing group needs to be your priority. And I'm just so happy to be the chair over ASSAT. And we want that data, and we want to know that the funds that are allocated for Black students are going to a good cause and going to something that we can measure outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harrison.
That is the final comment.
Thank you, Mr. Aurelio. So I just want to also, apologize to the community for not having the actual materials attached and posted when the agenda was published for item E1 that we have tabled. I think that we definitely need to bring it back to our next meeting and have all of the attachments posted on time, as our board bylaw states. And I would like for us to really do follow up on getting some information on the data, because I think that we had an overview in the presentation that was posted today, but I think that it makes sense to have data presented on what is working, especially during distance learning and our lessons learned from last spring. Is that all the public comment?
That is all the public comment, yes.
Thank you. Okay, so thank you, members of the public, for sharing your ideas and concerns with us. Next, we have the business items consent calendar, and to remind trustees, C1, C5, and C6 were pulled. So the motion to approve the remaining items would be in order.
I'd like to move we approve all consent items except C1, C5, and C6.
I'll second that.
Great, can we please take a vote?
Cotton Blake, yes.
Garcia Avila, yes.
Ennis, yes.
Phillips, yes.
Lara, yes.
Hernandez Travis, yes. Motion passes to approve the remaining consent calendar items except C1, C5, and C6 with trustee Cuevas absent. Thank you, board. Up next, we have committee communication, item D1, superintendent's report.
So this is a new thing, so give me a second. I am sharing my screen. Each of the presenters is going to share their own screen, so give me 1 second, please. Can you see my screen? Thank
Yes.
you very much. So we're just trying to do this a little differently. So thank you very much. So you'll see a picture there of the grand opening of the Michelle Obama School, which is coming, and I'll talk about that in a minute. It's certainly been a busy few weeks with, the fires and the smoke and just continued stress on folks, but I will say so proud of the work everybody is doing across the district, especially our principals and our teachers. I know everybody is starting to feel it after being here for almost 2 months, going pretty hard. We do have a day off Monday, so hopefully that will give folks a little bit of a breather and get right back to it and make our push to the Thanksgiving break. As we had our resolution, we had National Principals Month. We have National Principals Month right now, and we really do celebrate our incredible leaders of all of our schools. I wanted to pass along some sad news. We did lose a current teacher just yesterday at El Cerrito High School, Christian Barnell, who was battling cancer. And our thoughts and prayers go out to the El Cerrito High School community, and we'll do the more full obituary and reflection at our next board meeting. As you know, on Fridays, we're doing Wellness Fridays, and that is growing little by little every Friday. We did our first all student council meeting. So we had students from about 15 different schools, and we're going to build that to all 55 of our schools. And they came and talked about different things going on at their school. And a number of them volunteered to help put it together and really create what the structure is going to look like going forward. That is really exciting, and I'm excited to build that. Let me move that to present mode. We are also coming off a joint WCCUSD board and CBOC meeting last week. Nice to get together with the CBOC. Reporting that attendance and immunizations continue to improve. So thank you to everybody who's been pushing and helping, from teachers, staff, principals, front office staff. I know some of our board members have really helped get that word out, so we really appreciate it. Continued celebrations going on across the district to celebrate Latinx Heritage Month. I didn't get a chance to go, but I heard that Lakes event where they hosted a graduate student who's doing work around race and ethnicity, and got to talk to the students, named Brittany Ribeiro Brown, was supposed to be fantastic. And then I did want to mention, last board meeting, we talked about closing the books. And I think it's worth another note of appreciation to everybody. I know we'll move into our next thing, and life moves quickly, but I really did want to reflect. We've spent a full year on that, really getting ourselves back in good shape, and to know we've put $35 million aside for future reductions if they're needed, that we do plan to end without being in any type of structural deficit this year. It's great news for this district. And we'll see what happens in November. Proposition 15 is really, really important, and any way we can help folks get behind it is great. But I do want to thank the business services team, Dr. Wold, Regina Weber, Gustavo Aguilar, Andrea Arnold, all the people who worked on this. This district is in, pretty good shape. We know the state's not, and that will affect us, but we've put ourselves back in much better shape. And I really think that's worth holding on to. We'll keep telling that story over the next few weeks as we move into election season and see what happens on the ballot. So thank you for giving me a minute on that. Just things that are upcoming and next. Really, we're going to continue to push to get all our lunch forms in, get all our immunizations done. I didn't put on here, but definitely want to make a plug to our community for people to get their flu shots this season. That's important. And the same clinics that offer you flu shots can get you immunizations as well. We're continuing our all staff race and equity professional learning in October. This week, we're going to give everybody a chance to actually watch the Pedro Noguera session where Pedro spoke to parents. And then next Friday, we're doing a grading for equity workshop with everybody across the district. The safety committee is taking up the conversation about SROs and CSOs, and there's a meeting on October 14th to begin that process. So I thank Trustee Lara for helping to get that together so we can really talk about the role of the CSO, and we can talk about any future role for SROs down the line and what that could look like possibly. Richmond Promise Scholarship application opens today. So that is open for a number of months, but those applications and those awards continue to grow. So we want to continue to make the community aware. This is a very special thing that we have for our students who are going to college. Anybody from Richmond going to college is eligible for $1,500 per year. So up to $6,000, which definitely makes an impact. We have a virtual college day coming, and the Michelle Obama grand opening is Thursday, October 29th at 11 a.m. And this is a really beautiful, special new building that we're excited to celebrate. So that is my report. Thank you for bearing with me with the technology. And I will stop my share.
Thank you, Superintendent Duffy. And now we have the next item, D2, Student Board Member Report. If we could begin with Trustee Cotton Blake and then Trustee Garcia Avila.
All right, thank you. Good evening, board, and as well as all the attendees here tonight. Since we last met, I have been fully engulfed in school, working with my classmates to move forward, working with a lot of the freshmen at our school as the middle college program is very different, and they don't have the usual support that they would have if we were in person. So a lot of outreach on that front. Now, also while, since the last time we met, I have been working with the Office of African American Student Achievement Director, William McGee, and we've been working to put in a financial literacy program to integrate into Friday Wellness or any other possible dates. And that's what I've been working on the majority of my time since we last met, something to give financial literacy opportunities essentially to all of the students in our district, something to have available, obviously not to push respectively. But on top of that, the Office of African American Student Achievement is putting together a game show that they will be presenting on in our next board meeting, where 2 students from each high school respectively will compete. They'll have a conversation about, how they're doing, how things have been going with school, their successes, their challenges, and their various needs. So that's going to be a great opportunity and something to look forward to moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Cotton Blake. Trustee Garcia Avila.
Okay, sick. So hi everyone. I want to start off with Spirit Week. So we have our first Spirit Week this week, and it's super exciting. A lot of people have been participating, which is like super crazy because we're on Zoom and like it's so new, which makes me so happy because we put so much effort into the Spirit Week. I was also once again a moderator for the Rich Revolution debate. So happy to see everyone. Each candidate was super amazing and they were sweet. Also, like as we know, our Q1 ends soon, which is so exciting because this is a new schedule for all of us and it's a bit challenging to kind of adjust, but it's fine. I mean, what can we do? And yeah, I'm super excited to just end the quarter off strong. And also something that I've been doing is I've been working on an Indigenous people's post for our Instagram. And I'm super excited because I'm the lead for it and I've never done something like this really important. And yeah, I'm super excited. So thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Garcia Avila. Thank you both student representatives for your updates and for providing the insight and the current events happening with your schools and with academics. Thank you. Okay, so up next we have the 3 standing reports.
Okay, we looks like we have 2 hands raised right now. So I'm gonna promote Zilan Harrison for the asset group. Zilan, you are unable to mute.
And if we can, perfect, okay.
I ain't gonna talk that long, Ms. Jarvis. It's real quick. I just wanted to get clear. The information that I received regarding the data was Mr. Walls told me that in a meeting. So if it's not, if we do have data and he can provide that for the parents, that would be awesome sauce because we would like to see what the superintendent and whoever else have prepared for Black students in that budget. And if they have the data, we would love to see it. So that's, I just wanted to make that clear on, that was the big thing about the asking for and requesting data. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harrison.
Okay, and the next person is Don Gosney. You may unmute.
Thank you very much, and good evening to everybody here. Yeah, since she brought it up, I wanted to just sing the praises of Stephanie Garcia Avila at her moderating role in the school board forum last week. She really did a great job. She did us proud. Okay, now on to our report. While all of the CBOC reports are being made to the public board, they're also being made to the public, whether they're live and in person, watching on Zoom, or even watching the reruns from an online link. The CBOC feels very strongly about transparency and wants everyone kept in the loop. The big news since my last report was that we were finally able to meet with the board for a joint meeting. Because of the shelter-in-place directives, the previously scheduled meeting in late March was canceled. That means it had been more than a year since we had a joint meeting. Many thanks to President Hernandez-Jarvis for her leadership role at this joint meeting. As reported many times before, the real value of these joint meetings is that everyone has an opportunity to actually discuss the issues. We're not constrained by a clock staring us in the face. We can have an honest to goodness back and forth exchange of thoughts and ideas. So much can be accomplished when we meet like this. That's why the CBOC and the several members of the community that called or emailed me were so disappointed when 2 of the 5 board members were unable to participate in what we believe to be an important meeting. As for the meeting itself, we thought it was productive. We heard a report from Melissa Payne about the great project management plan, the PMP, that she and her people have been working on for the past couple of years. We look forward to this being finalized and fully utilized. We also had an update on the status of the unresolved items of concern from the forensic accounting investigation from nearly 5 years back. From this report, there were only 10 items left to resolve, and 2 of these involved the Ivy League connection and were, for all intents and purposes, resolved just 2 days before. That was my contribution. The last of the 3 items we were allowed to discuss was the need or lack of a need of a bond program performance audit that went beyond the statutorily required compliance and embraced the effectiveness and results as well. Waiting another 5 months to begin an audit of the many dozens of unverified recommendations seemed counterproductive to the CBOC, and we still advocate spending the relatively small amount needed to wipe the slate clean instead of kicking the can down the road another year. This may be an acceptable policy for the district's budget, but for the CBOC, We just can't accept this the right path for the bond program. The CBOC looks forward to when this actually comes before the board for action to see what path they take. Clean slate or kick the can. I've been working with any and all candidates willing to speak with me, so whoever wins in November will be fully versed about the bond program and the facilities master plan when they take office in December. The candidate forums have not been as well publicized as people wish they had been, and many of the forums have asked questions about the future of the facilities master plan. While the CBOC has no say or control over the final details of the FMP, we are, of course, very interested in the process that will be used to rank the schools. That's why we're so pleased to have a seat at the table on the FMP Prioritization Committee. When we hear from members of the community and the candidates, we frequently hear the term equity being used. And in the case of the FMP, equity seems to mean that the board and the district has to take care of the schools in the ward that the candidate and their supporters live, even if that means that schools, students, parents, and voters, in other words, have to suffer. And we thank Attorney Scott Rafferty for this new version of equity. It doesn't seem to matter that whatever might be best for the district as a whole, as long as the people in individual wards get what they want. One problem that we're hearing from the candidates is the lack of equity when it comes to how much of the bond program funds have been spent on Richmond and San Pablo students. I remind everyone that once each month we have report number 2 that is published online. This valuable resource shows how much this has been spent on every student in the district. This report shows with greater accuracy just how much the Flatland students have benefited from the bond program. The CBOC is still actively working to recruit new members to serve on the CBOC, and we can use the help of board members before they leave the board. Because we have a statutory requirement to fill 5 mandated positions, when one of those positions become vacant, we work to fill that position. Compliance is important to the CBOC and to the staff members we work with, in particular Louis Freeze. A few months back, I voluntarily transferred my representation from Richmond to senior citizens. Tonight, you approved the transfer of Maisha Cole from a Richmond representative to a parent representative. The benefit of both of these is that it frees up spots based on residency, and in this case, that was Richmond spots. And as always, we're working to update the CBOC website because the people deserve to know everything about the bond program. As another reminder, our next meeting will be hosted at 2 p.m. on Monday afternoon, October 19th. All are welcome. That means the board members too. Please go to the district's website, scroll down to committees, click on the CBOC and you'll find the Zoom link. Or bookmark the CBOC website and you'll see links for the current agenda, which will also have the Zoom link. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gosney.
Our next standing report is from Jose De Leon. Mr. De Leon, you can unmute now and begin.
Good evening, board members, Superintendent Duffy. First of all, I'd like to continue thanking our principals, assistant principals, vice principals, coordinators, and instructional specialists for all the work they've been doing to support students, teachers, parents, classified staff during this time. The continued work that we're committed to do in the race and equity within the sites and as a district. It's in the forefront of our thoughts. Much work is left, and we need to continue to re-examine our curriculums and our policies in order to better serve all our students. Also, I'd like to thank all the staff that has been working long hours at night and on weekends to support the race and equity work. Also, the staff that has been working in the 60 Minutes in the Faculty Lounge, they did a great job in interviewing the candidates. If you get a chance, please go on the WCCAA website to look at those interviews. One thing we are looking for is more communication and more information from the district in a more structured way. Sometimes it feels that we get so many different emails from so many different people without there being a clear thread as a district structure. That really sometimes hurts the work that we do at the sites when things are not clear to our principals. Therefore, it makes it hard to make it clear to the teachers in our community. Our principals, our assistant principals, our coordinators, instructional coaches will continue to work to support students. And we believe that keeping students at the forefront of all our decisions will only strengthen our district and our community. Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you, Mr. De Leon.
That is all the standing reports.
Thank you, Mr. Aurelio. Thank you to each member of the committees that spoke right now, to the representatives. Thank you for sharing your committee reports. So up next, we have discussion items. We don't have item E1 for today. That has been tabled for the next regular meeting. We have item E2, special education, update local plan board policy, and introduce significant disproportionality.
I'm happy to introduce Kristen Hardy, who's our new SELPA director this year, who's going to share a little bit about this item, updates to our plan, and just give a small overview of some of the work we're doing to address disproportionality challenges in the special education realm. So I'll turn it over to Kristen.
Good evening. I will screen share. Good evening, President Hernandez-Jarvis, Secretary Lara, trustees, Superintendent Duffy. Thank you for having me tonight to present these two items for special education. Just a little bit of brief background. West Contra Costa Unified School District is a single district SELPA. In California, all school districts and county school offices are required to belong to a special education local plan area, or SELPA, to address the needs of all children with disabilities. All SELPAs have the same basic goal: to deliver high quality special education programs and services to the students with disabilities in the most effective, efficient, and cost-effective manner practical. West Contra Costa SELPA operates within the administrative structure of the district and operates all the district's special education programs, as well as provides the functions of the SELPA. We operate a continuum of programs to meet the needs of students from birth to age 22. As a SELPA, we must see that programs provide any needed services for any students with exceptional needs and to assist in placements, provide technical assistance, and administrative support for the many requirements of the new laws and requirements being placed on the district. And so tonight, I bring to you an update in board policy to the local plan. So last June, my predecessor, Nick Berger, brought the local plan with the accompanying board policies. But since then, there has been an assembly bill which is going to require us to make a revision to an existing board policy. And so the board policy that's going to be updated is 6159.2, which you have in your board packet. And this updated policy relates to the district's oversight of non-public schools and non-public agencies under our contract. And it will bring the district into compliance with the new Assembly Bill 1172. A district may contract with a non-public school when it does not have an appropriate placement to meet the needs of a student within the IEP. It is considered to be the most restrictive placement, and so they're only utilized when the district cannot meet the needs of the student. This legislation came into being after several serious and even fatal responses by non-public school staff to student behaviors. The board policy increases safety and protection for our students in non-public schools through increasing our oversight and monitoring. This will include annual on-site visits, monitoring of documentation and progress, and most importantly, assurances that the non-public school staff have specified training and behavior support and are appropriately credentialed. So now I'd like to provide just a brief overview for the significant disproportionality process and requirements. I'll be bringing additional information to you and to the public in future meetings. West Contra Costa Unified School District has recognized the disproportionate educational outcomes for African American students for many years, and the district has worked to correct these outcomes through many structures and initiatives, and prioritize this work through the roadmap, the local control accountability plan, and now the learning continuity plan. And it expanded and specified this work through the resolution in support of achievement and success for African American students and Black students through the initiatives and pathways that you see on the slide here, to name just a few. But the special education department does find itself as being identified as significantly disproportionate. And why is this important? Disproportionate representation in special education reflects when a particular racial or ethnic group of students is identified at a greater rate than would be statistically anticipated. So disability is considered to be a stable construct and to exist across all populations at about the same rate. So when we see a particular group of students represented within a particular category or with a particular outcome, the concept is that then it's disproportionate. So significantly disproportionate means when the district retains that status of disproportionality within the same group for a period of 3 consecutive years. Why this is a problem, specifically the overrepresentation of African American students in special ed services, perpetuates a broader societal stratification. It's a deficit lens construct. It has a social emotional impact, and the long-term outcomes for students in special education are a higher dropout rate, lower achievement levels in school, college attendance, and career opportunities. Congress recognized the national trend and resulting problems of over-identifications of students of color for special education in the 1997 reauthorization of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. In order for states to receive their federal funds, their federal IDEA grants, they must create a plan to track disproportionate representation of students of color in special education by districts within the state. The Special Education Department, in collaboration, the Office of Special Education establishes a mathematical criteria for determining disproportionality. 6 years ago, OSEP, or the Office of Special Education, changed this calculation and which increased the number of districts in California who are identified as significantly disproportionate from 17 to over 300 in a single year, or 1 in 3 districts in the state of California were identified. In 2020, there are 180 school districts across California who have been identified as significantly disproportionate in 1 or more areas. This includes many of our local urban districts, such as San Francisco, Oakland, Vallejo, and Berkeley. Some of these have been in this process for many years. This is our first year as being identified. I think this is a testament to the intentionality of the service delivery model of our SELPA over many years to serve our students with disabilities within the district through a range of programs and services. However, educational system has become increasingly complex and more closely monitored, and this has revealed systemic inequities that have existed over a long period of time. For us, this data is based on 2016 through 2018, where we have over-identified African-American students for special education under the categories of emotional disturbance, and we've over-suspended African-American students who are in special education for a period of 10 or more days in a single year. What this process will require, it's a call to action and an opportunity for deep, meaningful, and sustainable change across our system in policies, practices, and procedures, and to intervene early to address the risk factors for students that prevent them from achieving the high-quality educational outcomes that we set for all students in the district. West Contra Costa is already committed to this work, as we've talked about. And this year, increasingly with the race and equity work and professional development, as well as the roadmap and the Office of African American Student Achievement, our partnership with Teachers College and the National Equity Project. This work is memorialized across our plans. And the hope would be that we then can achieve the district's vision that provide the highest quality education to all of our students, to make positive life choices and strengthen our community, and to realize the goals in the resolution for the African American student achievement. Our process will occur in 4 phases. This is set out by the California Department of Education. The getting started part involves identifying the groups and individuals that need to be part of this process, those that hold the information and our stakeholders in our system. Step 2 involves gathering both qualitative and quantitative data to identify the underlying root causes for these trends. Quantitative data comes from numerous interviews and focus groups that have been held. Step 3 involves us creating our action plan based on our root cause analysis, which, as I mentioned before, involves interrupting that cycle prior to students being in special education. And then we'll implement that plan and monitor it. The timelines for this process have been interrupted due to the school closure, and the CDE actually told all timelines for this process for quite a while. And then in spring, late spring of 2020, they reinitiated that and they set the due date for December 15th of 2020, which between the school closure and then the transition of leadership in the department puts us on a pretty quick timeline to complete this work. However, the department has really moved forward and done a tremendous amount of work. So who's going to be involved in this process? There are several sort of structures. First is the leadership group, and that involves general education and special education people across our district, from teachers up to district level administrators. This is a whole systems process and a whole systems problem. So everyone in the organization needs to bring their expertise and lens to this work for us to deeply understand what these trends are. And then our stakeholders groups then involves a larger group of people, our parents, our community members, board members, to pull all this work together and to verify the data that is emerging. And so then, as I mentioned, this 4th phase process, this is a very nice sort of placemat, if you will. It comes off of the SPP TAP website, which is the California Department of Education's one-stop shop on significant disproportionality. So I believe I included the link in the précis. There's really nice videos and a very nice sort of step-by-step process. This will require the district to withhold, actually the California Department of Education now sequesters 15% of our federal grant money for IDEA toward this work. We create our plan, we implement our plan, and then we submit our the expenses tied to that plan once it's been approved by the California Department of Education to the CDE for reimbursement. So it's a very, very highly structured and very closely monitored plan. This plan will go for 27 months. And again, the idea with this is that we focus on a group of students who we think, based on our root cause analysis, would be at high risk for experiencing these outcomes. And then we put in place interventions and monitor to see what happens. So it becomes like incubator sites and kind of a business model where we test out our hypotheses and expect to change the long-term trends for students. And so as you can see, we are well on our way to being at the place where we're developing that programmatic improvement plan. Upcoming dates, tomorrow, the stakeholders will have their first meeting and we'll bring forward all of the qualitative and quantitative data that's been collected for their review and discussion, with the idea that we will identify and solidify our root causes. On the 21st, I'd like to bring back to you the proposed board policies, which have been revised as a result of our analysis. and bring forward the root causes that the group identifies. Then the leadership team will meet again in October and November, stakeholder meeting in November to solidify our action plan, and then we'll bring the action plan to the board on December 5th. Our deadline for CDE submission, as I mentioned, is the 15th of December. And then moving as soon as the CDE approves our plan, typically takes about 6 weeks. And if we do a good job, we'll hopefully get approved the first time through, and then we'll implement that plan through November of 2023 with quarterly progress reports. And I think this is just really an extension of the work that the district is already doing. It does afford us an opportunity to look through a very particular lens, through the lens of special education, and to look at some very specific outcomes for our African-American students, and to learn the high leverage effective strategies that can support us. And by doing this, we can extend this work to all of our students and improve all outcomes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Hardy. Okay, so we will go to public comment, and then members of the board will have a chance to discuss.
Looks like we have one public comment on this item.
Thank you. I can remind the
Zalon,
public to raise their hand on Zoom, please, if they're connected via the app, or to press *9 to raise their hand if they're calling in. Thank you.
Zalon Harrison, you may unmute and begin your comment.
Good evening, board. I am so concerned about this. This is the kind of thing I was talking about. If we had clear data for Black students' success, we could prevent these type of situations. I'm asking this board, I would like to have a special meeting just to address the past budget and the services that Black students are receiving. This is, I didn't understand that the last session was for us to do our standing reports, but I was going to say that for our standing report, that we are requesting a special meeting for the board to address the past budget and deliverable of services for Black students. You see the special ed, it's stacked up with our children. Can you guys please listen? We have a resolution. There's no data to track that resolution success. And we work with the office, they've done planning, but we need the district. This is a district issue. This office just got in place and we're doing great things with them. And the superintendent is working towards that direction with the office, but it's not where it definitely needs to be. And I'm asking this board to get involved, Stop sitting there and letting the superintendent run everything. And this is a continual conversation. And now we're at a place where we're having findings in our district because of how we're delivering services to the same group of children. Are you guys gonna listen now? Can we have a special meeting to address the past budget and look at what you guys said, that we can have this resolution for our children, for children to be successful, to close the achievement gap and address this. This is just exposing us more to our lack of concern for Black students. Thank you. I was gonna stop. You have to put timer on.
Thank you. Can we hear that loud and clear? Thank you for sharing that about the report from ASAT as well. I definitely agree that we need to have a time where we set aside, if it's not during the regular meeting, that we really focus on having a sharp focus on this specific topic, the past budget, and also, these findings about just the disproportionate rate of over-identification of African-American students in special education. Thank you.
We have one more hand that was raised. Ada Narvez, you may unmute.
Thank you.
Ms. Narvez, are you there? Once again, Ada, you can unmute and begin your comment. There you go. Hello?
I can hear it sounds like the volume is very far away.
Can you try again?
Yes,
We hear you.
I would like to approach the board to talk about all the issues that we are having in the Hispanic community, all the kids that have come to our community, especially with the kids that are learning, students with the English learning program. It's very concerning that all the kids have come in this way when we have demonstrated with this pandemic how our community, student community, Spanish community, and others community that are English learners have a lot of struggles getting a better achievement in the school. It had to be a better administration when it comes to resources. Everybody is talking about the low performing in our schools. But when you take this kind of administration, it doesn't show that you are caring for the kids that have been constantly left behind in their learning process. I don't see how the district will get a better achievement gap, will close that achievement gap when you are closing the opportunity for students that need improve in English in order to grow their education. It's very disappointing what is happening right now. The same is happening with the students that are special needs. How are we going to create more trust in the district when all the measures are affecting especially a student that have the highest need in our district? We need to do better if we need more parents and students back to traditional schools. You need to do better in providing those resources that our community needs. This is so unfair that our kids are always paying the struggle of every deficit that the district have. And the struggle goes always where the communities, where the kids have the most biggest issues in learning, in past, not letting every kid behind, but not reading in grade level. How is that a good instruction for our kids in the future? This is not progress. This is not progress. You had to do a better work. Every time you had to do cuts. Pay attention to the highest need that you have first, and then plan your cuts. We need data. We need data for every plan that you have, and we need to see those projections and have every step. We had to work better with all the steps that we are taking right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes comments for this item.
Thank you, Mr. Aurelio, and thank you to members of the public who shared their comments and concerns with us. I also want to just very briefly comment before we begin discussion that I agree. I think that the Friday memo from the October 5th letter that went out to the public and to the board, beginning on page 3, there were some federal program monitoring findings, a summary of findings that I think are very important for us to take seriously and to talk about what does it mean for English language learners and what does it mean for the services that we're providing for them during distance learning too, and how should we address it. So I would be happy to have a conversation with Mr. Duffy and with Trustee Lara as the board clerk to see if an agenda setting we can decide when we can have a special board meeting to address these two very important issues that have been brought to our attention and have been known for a long time to be imperative to provide the best education for African American and ELL students. Thank you. So if we can begin, if board members have any questions for Ms. Hardy, I have the rotation here again. Our student representatives had to head off. So thank you both for being here today. And then Trustee Cuevas is not with us yet. So we will begin with Trustee Panas, followed by Trustee Phillips, followed by Trustee Lara, followed by myself. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President Hernandez Chavez. I'm very disappointed that this disproportionality finding is only being brought to the board 9 months after we were notified about it. You know, the findings confirm what people have been saying for a long time. And I think the board would have preferred to know about this back in January rather than now. And Ms. Hardy, like, I know you weren't here then, so I'm not like trying to put blame on you for this, but I just feel like we're seeing a pattern. I think President Hernandez-Jarvis just mentioned the federal program monitoring review that we got last spring, and it was kind of very briefly mentioned and almost dismissed in the September 11 Friday memo, and we got some more stuff recently on it. So I guess my first question is, like, were there formal findings that came out of this disproportionality analysis that the board could see?
Are you asking
or
for
Mr.
that?
Either Mr.
Well, I'm happy to jump in there. I mean, Ms. Hardy could talk about the details, but we get the findings that these are the 2 areas you are disproportionate in. This is how we did the calculations. We don't really even get that. You have to dig a lot further to sometimes find that out. You're simply on a long list of districts, and then you are asked to begin to put together your team, which we have slowly, we've assembled the team, and the county slowly began to let us know what's to be expected of us. So we don't get, a 20-page report with data broken down in lots of different ways. We're simply name on a list. Here's the areas, and here's, the expectation. You put this money aside, you build your team, you do the root cause analysis. And we're trying to do that in conjunction with everything else we're doing to deal with the disproportionate outcomes from our district. So we didn't withhold, a really mega report from the board in any way.
Well, perhaps you didn't withhold a mega report, but like, we found out about this in January. And I think, because the board, is hearing from the public about things that aren't happy about this. And I just think it would be nice if we knew about this stuff. And the same way with the federal program monitoring review. I mean, I don't know if that's a formal document, but I just think the board wants to see these documents and understand where we're falling short, because we're here. I mean, the reason we're here is to try and make sure that our staff and our teachers and our schools get the support they need. And if we don't know what the shortcomings are, it's hard for us to make the proper priority decisions. And so, I mean, is this timeline, I mean, I'm also kind of surprised that we're looking at this timeline that, I guess we've been doing some work, but like, we're having the first meeting of the stakeholders here in October, when this came out in January, but was that totally controlled by, I think, maybe the county? Or like, why is it taking us so long to have, what looks like tangible work being done on pushing forward on resolving this issue?
So I think I can respond to some of that. Part of this was the fact that the timelines were told by the state for quite a while. They, as soon as we went into the school closure, the districts got notification toward the end of March that the timelines were going to be told for an indefinite period of time. And then the districts were notified toward the end of May, which is the wrap up of school, that the timelines were in fact going to move forward again. So my understanding, and again, this is week, I think 8 or 9 for me in the district. So still learning the, learning all of the parts in history, but there was very quickly work we do have to identify what's called the technical assistance facilitator. That's one of the requirements from the CDE around this process. And so we are working with several TA facilitators who, number one, have very deep history with the district. They've supported the district through disproportionality. And they also are working with many of the big districts around us. And so we are in a community of practice that's really supporting. We're right where everybody else is because of the school closures. In fact, we're doing our stakeholder meeting earlier than several other districts around us. But we're pretty much right around that time frame. So we have to gather all that data, we have to find, and that takes a lot of interview, focus groups, plus all of the quantitative data extraction, and then we have to put all that together, kind of generate some ideas, some theories of action, and then we bring that forward to the leadership team, check that out with the leadership team, and then bring that forward to the stakeholder group and check it out again and kind of refine that work. So that's the process. So it takes a lot of time to really make sure. The most important part is making sure you have all the right data to work with. And obviously with summer and school closures, a lot of those interviews and things and focus groups took some time to get together. But that is really critical work. Making sure you have the right voices at the table and the right lenses is really critical. I have been fortunate or unfortunate that this is now my third district that's gone through this process. And so I can say that this district has done it with a lot of intentionality. The department really has huge, broad-based buy-in across the system, which should yield an action plan with a really good chance of making a long-lasting difference. And as I mentioned, there's a lot of districts who've spent a lot of years kind of going in and out of this cycle. And I think it's a lot of commitment for us to do it effectively.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that answer very much. And this might be a question more for Mr. Duffy. I mean, like, I've asked some members of the CAC, and it seems like this should have been the first place where this came up, and like nobody recalls this ever coming up. And I realized, like, you know, the former head of our self is gone, and maybe there's nobody here who can answer that question. But like, to me, these are the kind of things that should be coming to the CAC. And so I guess part of my question here is, are members of the CAC, you know, we haven't, I noticed that your presentation was different than the one that was published earlier, but there's a list of leadership and stakeholders. Are members of the CAC some of the stakeholders?
Yes, yes, and they are aware. We discussed it on Monday night at CAC, which was just my second introduction to CAC.
I understand.
And I mentioned it the first time. So anyway, yes, we discussed it on Monday, and they are members of our stakeholder groups.
Okay, and have we decided like who fills all these leadership slots and who fills all these stakeholder slots?
We have put together our leadership team. In fact, we met with our CDE consultant today to discuss that. Again, the state gives us, it's very prescriptive at this point, and they ask for particular staff members to be involved. And so we have filled all of those positions and then included some additional folks that based on the historical work of the district are people that are important to that conversation.
Okay, and what are the major risks you see that could cause us to not hit this timeline? And also, like, what happens to us if we don't hit the timeline?
I'm going to try really hard not to think about not hitting the timeline. I think, again, we have a very experienced team of TA facilitators who have supported districts to get through this process. It is a very prescriptive process. Once we get our root cause analysis, because the district already has so many initiatives in place, it's really about tying those pieces together, focusing them through the root cause analysis. Nothing is going to be surprising that comes out of this. We want to go deeper, more focused, go below, go deeper and closer to the work than because now we have this very prescriptive process to do it. And so that's the advantage, plus the community of practice, right, with states, districts all across the state. So we're learning and working with them on what they've done. But again, it's all very consistent with, what's kind of in process for us already.
Okay, and so you feel like we have the data we need, and you've been through this a few times, and the process is prescriptive. So you think like, unless something extraordinary happens, we're on the timeline.
Yes, It's not
Okay.
easy work, for sure, not easy
Yeah.
work. And then the hard work starts when we actually implement the plan, but I do feel like we're in a good place to
Okay.
hit that timeline.
Thank you very much. Those are my comments and questions.
I'd like to ask Trustee Lara if you can facilitate for the next couple of minutes if needed. I have to take a little break, go to the restroom, and I'll be right back. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Trustee Phillips, did you have comments or questions?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I feel like there is a transparency issue here. When it comes to problems, major problems, the staff, and particularly high-level staff, cabinet-level staff, superintendent-level staff, are not bringing information to the board until they have to. They're sitting on it. And we can go back in time, and I was thinking about this as Trustee Panis was talking, but we can go back in time all the way to the beginning of the budget problems. Staff knew about these problems for months and did not bring it to the board until it absolutely had to. In this conversation, Trustee Panis has brought up two examples again, where staff has known about information and really did not bring it to the board until it absolutely had to. And what Trustee Panis said was that when we don't have the information that we need, we can't make the best decisions for our students. That's 100% true. But I'm going to add one thing to that. When these major things keep coming out to the board months after staff knew, we also don't have the information that we need to give staff proper evaluations. Because these are the kinds of things that would indeed affect an evaluation. But we don't get these things until the evaluations are over. And that's an issue. I want to talk very briefly about the idea that our students, particularly our African-American students, are being over-identified as emotionally disturbed. And I want us to look at our discussion. I want us to look at the paradigm that we have as a district. Every time, or it seems like every time, we have a discussion about how to spend money in this district. And what you're about to hear me say is something that you've heard me say variations thereof in the past. You heard me talk about this at the last board meeting. But every time we have discussions about how to spend money in this district, the conversations seem to revolve around mental health services. We have staff call in, whether those are teachers, a lot of times it's teachers, call in and talk about how our kids are suffering from trauma and about how they need mental health services. We have nonprofit organizations call in and talk about how our children suffer from trauma and need mental health services. Now, I have said in the past that mental health services are important. And for the children that need them, I do believe that they should be provided. But at the same time, at some point, we have to look at how we are talking. We are manufacturing a need. We are manufacturing a need. Or let me take that back. Manufacturing a need is not the right statement because there is a need, but we are manufacturing additional need. And we're doing that because we're creating this space where essentially our children are broken. This is how we talk about them. Our families are broken, and we create this perspective and paradigm that because they're all broken, we just have to throw mental health services at everybody. So it is not a surprise to me whatsoever that we are over identifying African American children as emotionally disturbed. Because if you just roll the videotape on these board meetings and the public comments that we hear, that is a large part of what we talk about. And everybody in this district appears to think that they are mental health specialists, and they're not. And so I'm not saying that mental health is not important, because it is. I'm not saying that we should not provide mental health services to our children, because we should. But what we need to do, in my humble opinion, and you've heard me say things like this before, is stop labeling every child in this district, every child that comes out of the Flatlands in San Pablo and Richmond, as emotionally disturbed. And I would bet if we did a study to correlate when we began talking like this as a district, I would be shocked if we couldn't correlate the increase in overrepresentation to the dialogue that we have in these meetings about how bad off our children are emotionally and mentally. So I would like to see that happen. I would like to see a correlation, and I think we will find that as we began to talk and label these children, more and more and more of them went into special education as identified as emotionally disturbed. The next thing that I want to say is the work that we are doing around race and equity. I really believe that someone from outside of our district should be leading this work. And the reason why is, well, heck, if you have a problem with anger, you go to an anger management group and you have someone else work with you to work through it. The angry person doesn't sit there and counsel himself or herself about how not to be angry. Then that's exactly what we're doing when we try to lead this discussion on race and equity. If we look at our systems and we look at our outcomes, we have a structural problem with racial equality, with ethnic equality in this district. It's here. It's not from somewhere else coming in. It's here. So this, I'm going to use the words of Michael Gonzalez. This is an issue of the sick patient trying to diagnose himself. We need a doctor. So I really want us to stop and to rethink this, because I don't believe that we have the ability to lead this discussion ourselves. And the fact that we have this finding and that we're under monitoring is just an example that we don't have the ability to lead this discussion ourselves. So that is what I have to say on this issue for now. Thank you very much for indulging me. Madam Clerk, I know I went a little long.
Thank you.
That's fine. President Hernandez is back. Yes.
Thank you, Trustee. Thank you, Clerk Lara and Trustee Phillips. Trustee Lara?
Yeah, it's my turn. First of all, I want to thank you for this presentation. You know, I have to disagree. I have to say I disagree with most of what's been said already. I've been a teacher. I was a teacher for 38 years. And this issue has been an issue as long as I can remember being a teacher. And it just is. And years ago, people just kind of went, oh, well, you know, gee, too bad. It's very different now. And what I see here is something very specific. I'm really interested in the root cause analysis process. I think that's going to be very telling about this. So I think you've got some of the best practices here in place. I'm very pleased by what I see. And then when I look at slide 11, I mean, there's things we've already got going, you build on, you enhance and you expand. And, it's not like everybody's just been sitting around doing nothing. You are actively engaged in this. This shows that. And you're bringing in some really smart people. We don't need any outside context. We've got a lot of smart people in-house. We need to support them. And what's really different now, I think, is that with all of the issues about, systemic racism, we are going to, when you get to that root cause analysis, we're going to look at the systems and structures that are in place and have been in place for decades that we don't realize, or to have that understanding that in the long run, this is what will happen if we keep those there. Anyway, I like that it's prescriptive, and that also there's, like you said, a community of practice. So you're not doing this in isolation. There are key people that you are also communicating with who are doing the same work. So I don't see this as anything frivolous that you're doing. And I think you're being very cautious and methodical, which you should be. And I'm very pleased with what I see here. And it would be great if we could do it like overnight. But this is work. This is hard work. And I think I hear the commitment, I hear the dedication, and I feel like what you need is support. And you have my full support in moving forward with this. I think it's going to have a big result. And I predict other districts are going to be asking you, what did you do over there? How did you, what was your process over there? So I'm just, I'm very supportive of the direction that this is going. And I thank you very much for the work that you've done so far. So thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Lara. Ms. Hardy, I have a few questions. I have 5 of them to be exact. The first one is if we can go to slide 7, please. If we could share that, it would be great.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I apologize to members of the public too. I am having a lot of sniffles and things like that from the fires last week. It really affected my breathing and lungs. So I'm sorry if I'm making extra noise. So I wanted to ask about this, that I was a little bit confused because there didn't seem to be much clarity around specific numbers for over suspension. So I think when you were giving the presentation, you said that there were students who were identified as being emotionally disturbed or in special education, maybe in another category, but that they were over suspended for 10 or more consecutive days. Do we have a number for how many students who are identified as special education students were over suspended, meaning they were suspended for 10 or more days consecutively?
So it's 10 or more days within a single school year. So it wouldn't be 10 consecutive days necessarily, but it would be 10 days of suspension over the entire school year. And yes, we do have that data.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. So they were not consecutive, they were as a whole 10 or more days.
Correct, yes, multiple suspensions.
And so where is that data housed? Is that something that's accessible to the public? Is it something that can be put in a Friday memo that is published?
I'm happy to put it in a Friday memo. It does come through we track those systems, and then to the state, it goes to the CalPAD system, which holds all of the state's data around individual students.
Thank you.
In particular areas.
CalPAD's accessible by non-district staff, right? By community members?
It is not. It is an internal system, but I'm happy to get the data for you and publish the numbers for 2016-17, 2017-18, and 2018-19. If that's, is that what you're asking for?
Please, thank you. I think that would be really helpful to having a more fruitful conversation around this, because even though the process is prescriptive, I think that it makes It makes a difference, I think, to know the exact numbers to see how, if we are moving toward the goals of our positive school resolution and having, I just think that we need to have the numbers for the sake of knowledge, and I think the community needs to also have access to them. So thank you for that. So if we can have it in a Friday memo or publish in a way that is accessible by all of us, that would be great. In slide, let's see, on slide 9, so it has the process, right? The different phases, 1 through 4.
Yes.
So where are we? I couldn't really gather from, I know that slide 12 has more in-depth, but it's progress for 3 areas. So then are we still in phase 1?
No, we're in between here. So we're finalizing our root cause analysis here and moving into the planning phase.
Okay, thank you. So when did we get started officially? Was it before you started with us? Was it months ago or was it recently?
It did begin under Mr. Berger, yes. And then I picked it up
So then how many?
as soon as I got here.
Thank you. So then for how long, Mr. Duffy, maybe this is a question for you. For how long were we in phase 1 as a district? Since when have we been before we got to phase 2 and being in the in-between? Because this is, like, in all honesty, this is, kind of big news to me. And I think that Trustee Panas talked about that. So I wanna know, how long we've been in phase 1.
I'm not sure that the phases have strict timeline in that way. What I do know is that we were alerted early in the calendar 2020 the 2020 calendar year. And that was the first time we heard about it, and then started learning a little bit more about what we were going to need to do. So we have had a long history of disproportionality, but as Ms. Hardy said, the state has changed their calculations and the way they do that. And so that has now caught us in that web. And so that's work we have been doing for a long time, since before me. So then, of course, we had COVID happen early March. And so we didn't have a team together for that, and that was paused. And as the school year's gotten back underway, we've had new direction from the county on how to get the team back together, the timelines, et cetera.
Then thank you for that explanation. So then what does that actually mean? Like, is phase 1 actually something that happened? Because I think if we weren't getting started and we received notice of this at the beginning of 2020, then, I mean, it seems like phase 1 wasn't necessarily a phase. We actually started at phase 2.
So can I just jump in real quick from the fiscal side? The deadline was always based on when the state wanted the report submitted and the plan, which has always been in the spring of 2021. So it was all about gathering the data. As Nick Berger started the plan of going into getting all the different pieces together, it was never supposed to be accelerated or slowed down. You couldn't jump into anything because everything has to be approved through the submission to the state. That's an important piece. And we always knew that these dollars had to be firewalled and protected, and that it's going to be, as we continue to get new guidance, it's going to be a reimbursement as you go through and get each step approved. So the process is not delayed in any way. There really was not full guidance until more recently as we've gone through. So we're right on the right pathway that we should have been on towards a submission in January, February.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Dr. Wolf. So I guess my question is was the board notified of this officially in any memo or in any communications that the phase 1 had started months ago and that this was underway?
I would have to look back. I know we didn't do a board presentation like this, and I would have to look back and see if there was any email or Friday memo where we communicated this to you or Mr. Berger communicated this to you. If not, again, apologize for not getting it to you earlier. as we were obviously getting ourselves together to get ready for that.
Thank you. I just think that it would have been, not to say nice, but I think it would have been more effective for our own governance and for transparency that we actually approved the WCCUSD Special Education Annual Services Plan for this school year in June, as is in the slide 2, and none of that was mentioned during that presentation. And it seems like it would be very relevant to that. So I do have an issue with that, because it seems like now we're being presented with something that is very important. And I totally get that Ms. Hardy began with us, 2 months ago. So I'm not saying like, Ms. Hardy, that is your fault or anything, but I think as a system, we need to have the understanding that when something critical, like, like the ELL findings or like this is communicated to district leadership, I think it definitely involves the governing board. And I know that we only have a few months left together, a couple of months left together, but I think that still there's a lot of things that we need to make sure that for our own board and the next board, that those systemic things are happening in a productive way so that we get information right when you read it as well. I think that that would help us make the decisions that are needed. I have two more questions very quickly. So then you mentioned a 13%, I don't remember what slide it was on, but it was a 13% of IDEA funding. What is the dollar amount that is gonna be withheld and then reimbursed once we have the plan in place?
Dr. Wall, did you want to respond to that, or would you like me to?
I had muted. I'm sorry. It's a little over 900,000. It's, you take whatever the final apportionment is from the federal funding and you take 15% of that. So when I say it's exactly 900, if one student changes in the SACE, that changes the allocation amount. So we put enough in that if it went up or down a little bit, we're sure that we have that money secured directly for this focus to make sure that we are protected, not only this year, but in the future. It's built into our operational budget that we'll continue to fund this each and every year with new ongoing dollars so that our phase 2 and phase 3 are implementable and sustainable.
Thank you, Dr. Wolf. And my last, it's more of a request, it's not much of a comment or question, but can we have more information in the Friday memo as well about the root cause analysis and what that's going to look like? I think you went into detail about the next steps. And so I just think that to have a more specific idea of what we're going to be looking at in the next couple of months, like what is it, what is going to be the root cause analysis and what is it going to entail? So there's clarity around what we're looking for.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ms. Hardy. Thank you, board members, for the discussion, and thank you to members of the community for your public comment as well. Okay, so now we're going to, and I know that for this item, we also had the update on the local plan board policy, and that was a separate attachment to this. When I walked away from the virtual dais, it wasn't discussed, right?
No, it's to take a look at based on this conversation, and we'll come back and approve it at the next meeting. So
first reading. Thank you. So now we have another first reading, item E3, first reading of revisions to Board Bylaw 9270. Dr. Wolf.
So last week we had the joint CBOC meeting with the board, and we talked about findings that had come out from multiple audits over the last 4 or 5 years. One of the findings had to do with the district's business ethics expectations policy that needed to address vendors, contractors, and others that do business. We worked through with CSBA that didn't have a direct policy along this line there, so we had to take a deeper dive to determine where is the best fit for it, where is the best place. We found our current board bylaw that addresses conflict of interest is the appropriate place to put information where we're going to require our vendors to make disclosures to do business with us. On page 5 is where the additions are. That's the major change for it. We're bringing it tonight for first reading. Then with the board's adoption on the 21st, this will be validated that we have met this one of those 112 items that we can check off that box and go to the next one. We will be sending you a Friday letter, as Don Ghazni spoke tonight, about the 2 items that we're able to address there. So you'll get the Friday letter, which will then be the documentation to close those. And we are 100% committed to working on each and every one of them this year so that we can try to put the past in the past and then focus on whatever's left. And if there's something left, we're going to bring it right back to the board and say, this is what we still need to work on. But we have to close these out. So tonight we're asking you just to take a look at it, and we'll bring it back in 2 weeks for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wold. Are there any members of the public who would like to participate in public comment for this item? Please raise your hand on Zoom or press *9 before we have discussion. Mr. Aurelio, do you see anybody?
I do not see any hands raised for this item.
Thank you. So board members, if we could begin with Trustee Panas, followed by Trustee Phillips, Trustee Lara, and then myself for any questions or comments on this policy.
Thank you, President Hernandez-Jarvis. I have a few thoughts on this. So when I look at the additions, in paragraph 2, it's talking about contributions or donations to organizations. And then it looks to me like paragraph 5 is talking about campaign contributions. I'm not complaining about that per se, but have I got that right?
Yes, so paragraph talking about if they do anything that says that they disclose any campaign contributions, correct. That was part of the whole issue 4 years ago, was there connections between vendors that did business in construction and campaign contribution.
I'd like to suggest a different way to approach this. I basically like to say, and I've written some language here that I will read, that we should say the district has a policy that we're not going to do, in a sense, do business with vendors who, or with organizations that are giving money. And so I wrote this, it's not that long, a little section here like, the district will not pay or agree to pay any person for services, products, or goods if such person has in the last 3 years made a donation to any candidate, controlled committee, legal defense fund, committee or organization supporting a district tax measure, a project or activity run by the district, or an organization or nonprofit organization that's related or connected to a district or board member. And there's a bunch of terms there that actually come out, that this is based on some campaign finance legislation I've seen, campaign finance reform legislation. And there's a number of definitions that come from the FPPC and the government code, for terms like candidate and contribution, committee, controlled committee. But to me, like saying that we're not going to agree to pay any person for services, products, or goods if they have donated is perhaps a better way to not have this problem than to say people are supposed to disclose contributions and not even say they can't take them. They just have to disclose them. So I'd like the board to seriously consider that kind of an approach rather than just saying, because I mean, basically all the contributions that are listed in paragraph 5 there, if you're a candidate or, any kind of a committee, you have to disclose those anyway in your FPPC filings. So why not just say the district's not going to agree to pay anybody if they've made contributions, and like if they want to do business with the district, that means they can't have made contributions. So those are my thoughts on this bylaw, and I don't know if other board members have different perspectives or what.
So I'll just add real quickly, thank you for your comments. And indeed, the intent is for that disclosure. The reason we did run this through legal counsel, that you want to be careful from a long list, is sometimes entities that you never would have anticipated get folded into that list. And I'll give you an example. There's the Independent Ed Fund that supports many initiatives in the district. And it's an appropriate place to donate dollars to be able to support the district. That could potentially get caught up in the language as you described it. Not to say that that doesn't make sense, just that's why you want to be very careful when you get to very prescriptive language there. And the disclosure allows for those nuances to be addressed prior to entering into any contract. But understand your concerns.
I understand you ran it through through legal counsel. Like, you didn't run what I wrote through because you didn't have it.
No, of course not.
Counsel. I don't know that I have a problem with it. It's just like, hey, why not just like say, and you know, maybe the ed fund's a problem, maybe it's not. But I just feel like we shouldn't be paying people for services or goods, like if somehow they're making contributions back to us in some way. So those are my thoughts on the matter.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Panas. Trustee Phillips.
Thank you very much, President Hernandez-Jarvis. So I have a couple of comments, and the paragraphs are not numbered, but the paragraph that talks about donating to organizations or nonprofits that are connected to a board member in any way having to report that. So I'm a Rotarian, and folks donate to Rotary, for example, all the time. And I don't really see that as an issue. That's kind of like what you were talking about with the Ed Fund. But if that's the route that we want to go, then I do think that we also need to put in there something about knowingly, because we are all members of multiple organizations. I mean, I am anyway, and I expect that many of you are as well. And I could very easily see there being a situation where somebody could donate to something and a board member be a member and not know, just because that's life, right? So I think putting something in there about knowingly doing it, if you knowingly donate to something that a board member is tied to, that you report that. The next thing is whether it's right or wrong, and we can talk about Citizens United all day, but companies do have a right to, and I've never, received a donation from a vendor. So before people start going on social media and saying that's why I'm saying this, let me just say I've never gotten a contribution from a vendor. But that said, they do have a constitutional right to donate. And essentially the suggestion that I'm hearing is would be to tell somebody in order to do business with the district, they actually have to waive their First Amendment right. And again, people have different ideas of whether, political contributions should be considered speech. Whatever you think about that, the fact is that they are considered speech. And I don't know that you could ask somebody to literally waive their constitutional rights in order to participate in public business, which this is public business. The last thing that I wanted to say, but if we really, really wanted to do something that was really robust and we wanted to clean up everything or what we thought needed to be cleaned up, then we need to look at more than just contributions and more than just direct contributions, because there's a lot of money that gets funneled in this district between organizations to other organizations and then end up in campaign accounts. And so, like, if we really want to do this, if we really want to dig deep, then we have to have that conversation about how money is being funneled. And it ain't being funneled to me, but how money is being funneled and has been funneled now for multiple years in this district between organizations. We also need to have the conversation about how organizations are supporting candidates, not just by donating, but by also volunteering or doing things in kind. So If we're gonna do it, we're gonna have that conversation, we can have it. But let's not have a surface conversation that quite frankly affects some people, but then allows other people and other candidates to get unlimited amounts of money, just not directly, and to get unlimited amounts of support, just not directly. And because it's not direct, it doesn't actually touch this policy. That's not campaign finance reform. That's just not. So I don't see that's a farce. So I'm done. Those are my comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Trustee Phillips. Trustee Lara?
Yes. As we speak, there are people donating hundreds of thousands of dollars to campaign candidates for seats on this board. I'm not talking little 10, 5, 10,000. I'm talking hundreds, and it may go up to millions. That's how important these seats are. And you got to ask why. It is because they can profit. That's where the conflict of interest is. That's where the corruption is. And that's what we have to have a higher standard of ethics and not allow that to happen and say, no, you can't do that. And can people who are donating hundreds of thousands of dollars sit on our committees? Is that okay? So we need to really think about what our ethics are and be very clear, because it is not, they're just so generous and they care about our children. No. It's for profit. It is profitable for some people to be on this board, to have influence on this board. And I know there's a shell game of organizations and you know what? Everything they do is legal. It's unethical, it's immoral, it's corrupt, but it's perfectly legal. We have to guard our public school fund and our processes. And again, we are the role models for high ethical standards. Those individuals, and I would ask this district to please check out who's making these huge contributions. You might see some familiar names there. Please look at that. And then let's think, what do we need to do about that? So I'm just asking you to please look at it with eyes open, with all the information that you need. There is a way to look up, campaign contributions. Please do that, please. And then let's discuss this more. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Lara. I feel like this is coming to us right now, and I wonder if, because it's a policy and this is a first reading, if we should have another reading come to the board, or if we can have it go to governance. That's something, we take a policy there as well. But I think that there's a lot of important information being shared by trustees. And I think that having Trustee Cuevas present would also be beneficial, because I think that even though we only have a couple of months together as a current board, I think that having the views of everybody expressed is important for a policy like this one. I agree that there's a lot of need, I think, to be more specific, but also not too prescriptive where we may infringe upon someone's right. So I think that Trustee Panas and I think that Trustee Phillips brought up a lot of important points that we need to look further into. And I would be happy to have this come to governance. We can have it back to the full board for another full reading, taking into consideration the comments that were shared by trustees today. But I think that this is definitely a policy that has to come back to us.
Yeah, I would recommend President Hernandez-Jarvis, because of time, we would like to bring this forward with this board before we have a new board seated that hasn't had the history of some of the pieces. So we are very comfortable bringing it back again at a reading level for the next board meeting. And we'll take what direction to add language into the preces or to the side for further discussion to do, and then revise based on that discussion at the next board meeting, if that would be the wishes of the board, rather than go to governance where we lose a couple board meeting cycles before it comes back. This keeps it moving in a way where we have it in the light of day. And it's also happening during an election season where it's a clearly focused area for most folks. We would be having the conversation prior to the November 3rd election. So that would be our recommendation if that's okay with the board.
I think that makes sense. That's okay with me.
And then we would add the suggestions that we've heard. If trustees were to send them to us, we'll just add them into the preces so that they're in writing for that discussion without revising the policy one way or the other, but it'll be there as a ride along for true open conversation, if that would be appropriate.
That works for me. I think that having them in writing that way would allow us to see if we would have a motion to include those suggestions in the actual policy. Trustees, I see a few of you nodding your heads. Trustee Phillips, I saw you. I don't know if you were raising your hand or not. I can't recall, but is that fine with everybody?
Fine with me.
President Hernandez Jarvis, I don't mind this going to governance, like you said. I do have some concern to hear, like, literally, I mean, so I have made comments over the last couple of weeks about this board trying to do things on the way out of the door. And I'm not saying, and some things are necessary. I'm not saying that all of the business of the district is supposed to stop. Some things are very necessary, but some things are not. And this one is not. And to hear Dr. Wolf say, this time they just literally said it, we would really like to get this passed before the new board comes. I don't personally feel comfortable with that kind of language. And again, I've never gotten a donation from a vendor in my life. So this is not about me trying to, keep my campaign coffers going. They don't donate to me and I don't ask. But to hear somebody on staff, on cabinet say, you know what, we'd really like to get this passed before the new board comes in. I'm not comfortable with that. And that's what I've been complaining about for the last couple of months. This time they just accidentally said it.
It was intentional because, again, it's a historical.
I know it was intentional, Dr. Wold. I know it was intentional. I was being kind when I said.
Yeah, but it's not meant to say that we want one board or the other to approve it. It's really based on the fact that this board has had significant experience with the audit findings. That's the only reason why. Staff has no problem waiting for the next board. We do not have a problem. We just want to resolve this and have it codified by the end of the year so that we can move forward with the audit findings. So staff is comfortable in both directions. We're trying to do what we've been asked to do, which is close out issues and bring forward solutions.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Trustee Phillips and Dr. Wolf. Trustee Lara?
Yeah, Dr. Wolf, that's not what I heard you say. I heard you say that, it is a good thing. We have the experience right now, and you'd be starting all over again with the new board, and it would just be more informative for your process to have us be part of it. I would entertain, we can't wait until governance. I would entertain a special meeting even for this. I would be up for that as well. This is serious. This is important in the scheme of things. This is vital. So that's my, my opinion. And I don't think it's in the big scheme of things, this doesn't matter. This matters greatly. So, I would entertain a special meeting if need be. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Lara. Trustee Panes, did you want to add anything before we finish this item?
I could see it coming back to us. I could see it going to governance. I don't have a strong opinion. I guess my preference is generally governance, but if we want to have it come back to the board, have it come back to the board.
Thank you, Trustee Panas. That would be fine with me to have it come back to the board as another discussion item. I think that we would get feedback from the fifth trustee that's not present right now, Trustee Cuevas. I think that would be helpful as well. And if the majority of the board is not ready to move forward with it, then if we need to have more revisions, and that's something that we can do at that moment, and then bring it back for action once we have it ready to go.
Right, if the trustees that had comments would just send them to me, I'll make sure they're all included.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Wolf. Thank you, trustees. So that was discussion item E3. The last discussion item that we have before we go to action items is E4, data and reporting. With Ms. Logan, I believe. Ms. Logan and Dr. Wolf.
Yes, good evening, board, community. Nice to see you all. I'm going to pull the slide deck up on my screen. All right, you're all seeing my screen?
Yes.
Great. So we are excited to bring to you this evening a proposal for 3 proof of concept investments that we are bringing to the board this evening that will help us solidify our data infrastructure. So data reporting is a complex endeavor in a school district, particularly a school district as large as ours. And there are 3 areas that we have been focused on as a district. The first is understanding the data that we have and the data that we need. So what are the key problems that we are trying to solve, and what information do we need to have in the hands of decision makers, to have in the hands and the eyes of community to understand those problems and their solutions? The second is around organizing that data. So it's one thing to have the data in a system, but how do we make sure that it's both secure as well as integrated? So it's organized in a way that we can easily access it and share that information, which leads to the third piece, which is around building trust. So in order to build trust, we know our data needs to be accurate, it needs to be clean, there need to be processes for ensuring that ongoing accuracy and that the data is shared and accessible internally and externally. So as we've been working on these 3 areas, there's a persistent challenge that we have noted, which is that data reporting beyond compliance. So when I talk about compliance, we're talking about things like annual CalPADS reporting, et cetera. We spend our time, our energies, our human resources, making sure that that data is clean and accurate when it's reported. But reporting beyond compliance and then decisions that rely on data that need to come from more than one system continue to be a challenge for us because of that complexity. So on the next slide, here's a visual of all of our data systems, or I should say our primary data systems in the district. So our 2 largest data systems are PowerSchool, our student information system, and then Munis, which houses all of our HR and finance data. Those 2 systems are integrated with many of the other systems you see here on the screen. So we push data from one system to the other. We create automations, we create integrations so that things like creating student Google accounts from PowerSchool into Clever so that there's a single sign-on opportunity for students so that when students go to Clever, they simply click on the app that they need. They're already signed in with Google, they're in automatically. It's one example of one such automation. But what we find is that when we need to look at things like student data next to finance data, which are issues that come up continuously, staff is spending an incredible amount of time designing creative, complex ways to pull data out of those systems, mash that data together, create logic, create configurations to get a result that then we can use to take action. The problem with that is that 1, it takes a ton of time. There are lots of hands in the pot, and it's not something that's replicable and efficient over time. So overall, what we've found, and certainly I've found in the 2 years that I've been here, is that if we separate data input from data output, so data input is all of the work that goes into getting the data in the system, making sure that what gets in is accurate, clean, scrubbed, etc. Put a lot of energy into that work, and it's quite solid. The output, on the other hand, what we find with our data systems is that they're not really designed to produce the kind of complex output that we need for this sort of complex decision making that we do. So out of PowerSchool, I can get a certain output. Out of Munis, I can get a certain output, but it doesn't combine the two in a way that helps us to make complex decisions. So this is the place we find ourselves right now, and why we're bringing to you this evening 3 proof of concept projects that are in the contract section of the agenda. But we wanted to really share with you tonight kind of our why we're bringing these together and how we think they're going to move us forward to help us solve these complex data problems. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Wold, who will talk a little bit about our use case and what are some of those complexities that we're looking to resolve with some new technologies.
So this has been an area that's been a lot of conversation, position control. This year, we took a lot of work to clean up our position control in Munis, where there is a direct connection. But then when the question was, well, can we have an updated position control report on the website? We've had to go round and round about how to get it, and demonstrated that the fields don't come out in the way you want. So we wanted to just kind of walk through how business gets done and why we need to do business differently. When we do staffing allocation, we start by getting our enrollment projections. Those get placed into a Google Sheet. So a shared Google Sheet that, depending on whether you lock it or have multiple people that have the ability to update it, that creates a potential for risk and error. You then have a second Google Sheet that connects staffing assignments to the student assignments. How many students are in each class? That's not directly pulled from PowerSchool because they don't have an output that gives that report in a dashboard the way we need. Then there's a third sheet that has to connect the teacher's credential to their assignment to make sure that you're not putting an English teacher in charge of a history class or vice versa, and that you have enough of each credential on the site. Then a fourth sheet is tracking the vacancies and overages in staffing, because you can't forward date someone and have it show as a live vacancy in the system. And then you have a fifth different sheet that's tracking the actual attendance in ADA. So all of those sheets are being maintained and reconciled by staff, and people are looking at it and putting significant hours. But if we make one small error and forget to move one FTE, either don't add one or add one too many, that's a $100,000 cost to the district right there. Our proof of concept is to be able to connect these systems together and create immediate alerts as things go, to be able to ensure that Munis and PowerSchool are talking to each other. Next slide. So we really looked at the output side. How can we answer the questions that many of our stakeholders have been asking and start to move in a direction where we can provide much more transparent and appropriate data? So we have 3 different tools that we're looking at. Each of them we're doing through a proof of concept, so that the district is not locked into a long-term contract if they cannot prove that the connections can be made. Next slide. So the first one is data placemats. What this is really infographics. This is a quick, easy to read pulling of assessment data, student performance or behavioral data connected to the program that is funding them there, and the ability to quickly take a look at some of the questions that we've talked about tonight, that we've talked about in previous nights. This proof of concept would allow us to start creating very easy to read and follow documents that could be aligned to the AMOs for those contracts we approve. So that's the first one. The second one is business intelligence. It's a dashboard that pulls from Munis that goes beyond what the budget transparency tool can do. This provides higher level analysis. real time within a day cash flows based on things that are changing, the ability for us to do some checks once we go to the third piece and do the validation side, to be able to ensure that the data is more accurate and find out where the gaps are in the timeliness of entering data, the ability to ensure that we are tracking our expenditures on an ongoing basis without being stuck waiting for those interim reports each time, which are a snapshot in time and are always 2 months stale by the time they come anyways. So business intelligence moves us away from those Google Sheets. I'm a big believer in the 5-click methodology of data, that if you're talking about student data, the first view should be the district. You click one button, you should instantly be able to either drop to the school level or the grade level. You click the third button from that school, it goes to the grade. You go to the fourth button, it's going to go to the program, teacher, classroom, subject, whatever it is. The fifth button gets you right to the student, and then you can get to the detail. That's how data should be. Power BI starts to take us down that pathway for business. You can start at the district and start moving your way down to be able to get an analysis as we go. Next slide. And then the way we tie it together. This is the hardest work, and it takes the most programming expertise. I've worked in districts that were Oracle-based districts, a very powerful computer software where we had to maintain a suite of programmers. And it does take time to build that, but we believe we can build a proof of concept and connect that PowerSchool and Munis PCN, so the FTE, to the student enrollment and be able to see those two connected together and ensure that it goes forward. And that's the proof of concept. Can we map it and have the data come out and say, yes, it's validated? Then can we, phase 2, build an actual dynamic database dashboard that allows us to take those Google Sheets and put them into something that you don't have user error, you don't have the ability to have to correct. These actions start us on the pathway that many of our stakeholders have been asking for. That's Tracy and myself and Marcy Williams dug into, why can't we get this report? Our input systems don't provide it, but our output systems need to be improved. So I'm going to let Tracy kind of finish up.
So as Dr. Wold shared, those 3 proof of concept projects fit into a larger plan. So on this slide, you'll see this is our focus for this year. So we are still and continue to be focused on the inputs. So we're auditing our 2 primary data systems. We're upgrading Munis in December. We continue to do process mapping. So all of our cross-departmental processes to identify gaps and look for efficiencies. And we're building a new eCollect system to tag and track student interventions. So at the same time that we focus on the inputs, this is an opportunity to focus on the outputs, as we just described, and then look to build those out. So Power BI is a tool that we could not just use for HR finance data, but then begin semester 2 building out student data dashboards, all the while building our sustainability plan and our internal staff capacity. So these are one-time investments to build infrastructure while we simultaneously build staff capacity to support and continue to build out once we have the foundation. Next year, we continue the work on inputs. So again, decreasing the number of data silos, collapsing one-off data collections where we have those and collapsing them into our primary Munis and PowerSchool systems, strengthening those systems, and really focusing more so on data governance and accuracy. Similarly on outputs, continue to build on Power BI, as I was mentioning, not just internal dashboards, but external facing dashboards, public dashboards. Determine how we can expand and scale the data placemats for AMO program evaluation across all programs, and then continuing to build staff capacity. So thank you again for listening and for allowing us the time to share a bit about where we are in our data journey. We've come a long way. We are at a moment in time where we believe that investing in these 3 proof of concept projects will really help us solidify our foundation and put us in a strong position to use data to inform decision-making going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Logan, and thank you, Dr. Walt, for the presentation. Very thorough. If we can have public comment before we have a discussion. Ms.
Sure.
Carolina.
Sure thing. We currently have 3 hands raised. We will take the first one now. Petronila Fernandez, you may unmute. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Perfect. Thank you.
Good evening, board. My name is Petronila Fernandez. I am a mother of a 4th grader child at Forest School. This being I am very concerned about the data and everywhere the school system. Honestly, I am very concerning parent. I living from my child, first child, he is 6th grader. I took to my Forest School because that is the problem in our school system. If I look a little rude, my voice, because it's very frustrating as a parent when our children have the right to be succeeding, getting the right education, talking about data now. It has been a long time to discuss that thing. It is paying a lot of money on executive directors, so many hiring for $2,000 per year, and discuss this thing now. That is not very shameful. That is not good. Honestly, our children deserve the very best education. And it's not possible my child and other student, English learner with foster youth, that every child need a very good education. I am a mother. I am 7 years fighting for these things and have 2 years ago, the power school, I never see my child, how the teacher or what they are doing. Either I asking for the curricula, never give me answers. Why? I have the right to ask for. Why they don't provide me? Why you don't provide that information for parents? What is our children learning from the beginning of the year to the end of the year? Now you are discarding data. You're spending a lot of money. We don't know. Our children need succeed. They are behind of reading. Now we are discussing for distance learning. A lot of parents have this struggling, and our children, please be considered. You have one position. You have to move. You have to provide the very right education for a student. And I'm sorry if I talking a little bit rude, my voice, but I say again, it's 7 years. I volunteer a lot and I see a lot of struggling. And I see my face with my sons, and it is not the right. Now what in my school asked me because I am a problematic mother, because I living, but no one asked me why. No one's asked me why. But if you can talk me, I can give it a lot of the things is wrong for our school. You have to improve a better education for our children. They deserve respect and good. Thank you so much and have a great evening. Good night.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Zalon Harrison. Zalon, you may unmute and start your comment.
Good evening. I'm speaking because you guys know I've been talking to y'all for a while, and we've been asking for this for a while. What type of integrity, y'all only got 30 more days, maybe 60 more days together. What type of integrity have y'all been operating under if it hasn't been based on data? Now we're hearing that they're going to take our children's money and go get all this data to the system. Well, what were we operating on before that? Like, how were we measuring success and what the students need before that, and where the areas of weakness and strengths and what program deliverables were before that? And I've been saying that we have not had any data showing that the spending from under our past budget has shown that it's working. Now here we're going to spend all this money. Now we're going to get it right. I'm asking this board, and who stays and leaves on this board, please don't let this be a fad. If we're going to invest all this money, this needs to continue on, and you guys need to expect that report back. You guys need that information back. You guys need accountability for this. The kids in this district and parents are dependent on you guys to hold them accountable the superintendent's office, his cabinet accountable to give that data back on the students, so you guys won't continue to get things last minute. And you can't make a good decision for our children to get better outcomes than we're getting right now. Please do not let this data thing be a just waste of money. And we have these programs sitting on the shelf collecting data as usual. Because this is not the first one. This is not the first one. So thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Ms. Harrison.
Our next speaker is Estela De Paz. Ms. De Paz, you can unmute and start your comment.
Thank you so much, Mr. Aurelio. Can you guys hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Thank you.
We can hear you.
Okay. It's Estella again from Hercules. So besides being a parent volunteer and a special education advocate, my professional background is actually in systems development, and I'm a project manager and have worked on many data systems for different organizations. Like the other parents who have spoken, I feel hopeful that we're actually hopefully becoming very serious about data and how we're going to use data to drive decisions in our schools, because data is the lifeblood of an organization. And seeing this level of interest, and I hope real commitment, can get ourselves organized so that we can actually all be coming from the same place with the same set of information, with standardized look at data that would actually help us make good decisions. I am very hopeful that I hope that the project team that's responsible for this initiative will be moving forward using and leveraging industry best practices. I'm looking forward to seeing a concrete scope. How big is this project? I'd like to see a list of impacted stakeholders, not just the parents who are here, staff members, data users, that Dr. Wold are the people who are involved in that use case that you were talking about. We should be able to develop and invite those individuals and those stakeholders to develop the actual requirements that would eventually fuel this project. There should be a set of guidelines on what existing systems, like what Ms. Logan was talking about, need to be involved because they're impacted by this work, and what systems need to be developed. Ms. Logan, the data systems overview is helpful. It would be great to actually see a data flow with the architecture of how all of these reporting needs would be met. Defining these would help the district, and especially the board, to have a better sense of the scope and the investment we need to make for this project. Defining the scope will also allow us to see how deliverables for this project would actually impact the day-to-day reality of our teachers, our staff, so that this data can be used to make sure that we are making the best decisions for all of our students. Thank you.
And our final comment is from Ada Narvez. Ms. Narvez, you may unmute. I know we had a little bit of struggle earlier today. Ada Narvez, are you able to unmute? It doesn't seem to be connecting.
Okay.
Wait, no.
Is it working now?
No, okay. She's no longer there.
Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry, Ms. Narvaez. Yeah, she's not back. And there's no way to try to put her back again and see if it will work.
Oh, she's back now. Let me try one last time.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Ms. Narvez, are you there? Can you try to unmute?
If you're calling in with a *6 to unmute.
Wait, there you go.
Hello.
There you are.
Got it. That is awful signal tonight. Well, talking about data, this is not new. This is not a new issue. And by the way, the roadmap for education and progress that Superintendent Duffy created was based in a data that we had some years ago. So I'm wondering why it has become something new. How have been all through all these years been taking decisions in order to reach the goals in the roadmap for student achievement and for education progress. This is a shame that every time, every two years, we go back talking and talking about data when you guys really aren't working in building a strong base and continue working and created a good education and successful projections for the future for our kids, for education, and for having this district, this institution that is public and belongs to the community, to have a good institution that is providing education for children. This is a shame that having been spending a lot of money years ago, we still have the same issue that we don't have data. How is this possible that you are making and managing a lot of millions, billions of dollars without having projections, without having a strong base where you have to work on to make those projections, to see how the money is working and how are you estimating if those things are working? What you are implementing is working. Nobody knows. You're just spending money like if kids were playing with some kind of game, the life game, to see how the life is going to be in the future. This is not an invention, because every time you create something, you need to have a base from what to begin in order to make those factual steps and good results. That's a constant problem in this district. You are spending millions of dollars when you don't have a base that is the data. Accountability doesn't exist if you don't have data.
Thank you, Ms. Narvaez. Please wrap up your comment. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Narvaez.
That concludes our comments on this item.
Thank you, Mr. Aurelio. Thank you to every member of the public who shared their comments with us. Board, we will begin discussion. Trustee Panas, Trustee Phillips, and then Trustee Lara, please. Thank you.
Thank you, President Hernandez Jarvis. And thank you, Ms. Logan and Dr. Wolf, for your comments. I want to ask a few questions about the presentation. On slide 11, we talked about auditing our two primary data systems, PowerSchool and Uni. So when you say audit, what's actually going to be happening there? It's like comparing data types? Is this like comparing frameworks?
The proof of concept will allow us to actually take data such as position control and tie it directly to the student and teacher in PowerSchool, be able to create an export report that can be independently validated by looking back at the PowerSchool. Did they indeed map to this critical piece? Did we find that field? Did it connect together? Can we see that it's updatable? When you click on the allocation that there are 10 English teachers, does it indeed bring up 10 English teachers, or does it bring up 14 English teachers? Who are they? Who are their students? So that test is to be able to show that those two systems can be brought out, the data can be mapped, and it can be put into dynamic reports that allow us to present information in the methods that are required to make the appropriate decisions.
Okay, thank you. When we talk about upgrading unis in December, how is that a 3-month process, a 3-week process? Is that the start of a 2-year process? What's that effort?
So you want to talk about, we began a long time ago starting this.
Okay.
Sure, I can start, and then Ms. Williams, if you want to weigh in as well. So we are projected to go live in December. This is a project that was started over a year ago. So over a year ago, we began planning, we laid out our test plans. We're in the process right now. We're actually almost through with the testing. So we're in a good position to upgrade in December. I don't know, Ms. Williams, if you wanted to add.
Yes, we've been doing, as Ms. Logan said, over a year, and we've been auditing our data. This new version will allow the other systems to talk to with each other better, and it will be a big improvement. So we're excited.
Okay, thank you. When I look at the data systems on page 4, I see that, you know, our system for our positive behavioral intervention support, SWIS, is not there. Is it completely standalone, or was it not significant enough to make it onto this drawing?
Twofold. It is standalone. We're not pushing data from SWIS back into PowerSchool. But the other piece is that it is a minor system relative to the others, and that's why it wasn't included.
Okay. And one of the bullets on our slide 11 talks about build PowerSchool e-collect to tag and track student interventions. Is that the same kind of stuff as SWIS, or is that different?
That's different. So that will really allow us to, similar to what an earlier caller was describing, if we're talking about interventions for African American students, how are we tagging exactly what those programs are to each student, so that then we can look at student outcomes, assessment outcomes, tie those back to annual measurable outcomes for the contracts for those programs.
Okay. So I'll say, you know, this is a wonderful vision for data. It's really exciting. I'm just wondering what our estimated investment in doing this is each year for the next 3 years.
So part of it is the proof of concept, and that we have to get that built in. Once we start to go forward, we're actually going to be training our staff as part of this so that they can begin to add to the systems so that we're not reliant on an external programmer. That's one of the biggest mistakes people make, is they buy either a program or a programmer that they now have to keep paying over and over again. We will find, as we get things mapped, that there will be additional one-time costs. We may have to do a one-time investment to map something else in, or a different piece that wasn't connected. We believe that it will require us to shift some resources as we go forward. We're going to start looking at internal staff being built up in each of the departments to own some of this work there. And I think you're going to see a similar investment each year for the next couple of years as we really try to build up, especially that outward facing dashboard. That's going to be a real critical piece, because a lot of that's customization there. And we'll talk in the Friday letter about the fact that the state's template for budget for the parents is, in my mind, not nearly sufficient enough for what we've been wanting to do. So we're gonna have to customize even over what the state did on the LCAP there and build something better. And so that will be part of the investments as we go forward.
So can you quantify, you know, if we didn't do this year, as opposed to if we are doing this year, what's it going to cost us in additional staffing costs? I'm not necessarily complaining about those costs this year and the next couple of years.
We would not be able to provide the level of data that we're going to be able to provide from this concept. We're using a $250,000 aggregate one-time investment with dollars that are one-time there. We're looking at a very negligible ongoing expense that can be addressed within our operational budgets and will reduce staff overtime. If we did not do this, one, we would not be able to provide the data in a format that we want without directing additional staff away from their daily duties where we're already low on staff to get to those motions. So it could cost hundreds of thousands of dollars in staff time to not do this ongoing each and every year. And those reports would not be sustainable because it'd be a one-off every time until we design that capacity. And that's what our plan is, to teach people how to do this through this implementation so that staff can maintain it.
Okay, thank you very much. Those are all my comments for now.
Trustee Panas. Trustee Phillips.
Thank you very much, President Hernandez-Jarvis. Um, as I listened to some of the callers make comments about how this process has been taking, or rather, why this has not been put in place earlier. I want to say a couple things. I remember maybe 3 years ago, maybe 3.5 years ago, meeting with Trustee Panis and some parents, and we were actually invited to go, and we went and met with some parents around data, and that is how that data resolution came up maybe 3.5 years ago. And so I guess this is one of those times in public education where progress is extremely slow. And that is unfortunate for many of the reasons that the callers in said. But I am glad that we are moving in this direction. Zalon Harrison asked the question about this not being a fad. I think it is extremely important that this is not a fad. We are in an election season. I encourage people to speak to the candidates who are running for this seat about their position. This is something that's important to me. I know this is something that is important to Mr. Panis because I've worked with him on this, but talk to the other folks as well, because this can't be a fad. This is something that has to be implemented, and it has to be implemented with fidelity. And it's something that has to outlast everybody who is on the board right now, including myself. This is something that has to outlast all of the staff as well, because this is something that our children need. And this is something that we need, frankly, to be able to serve them properly. So I want to acknowledge the frustration that the callers in have expressed. I think you are on the money. And me personally, this is not a fad for me. And talk to the other candidates, because this is something that I think is a must, and I think that you will find people support it. So thank you very much for moving in this direction. Thank you for the presentation. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, Trustee Phillips. Trustee Lara?
Yes, we went to forced into distance learning 100%, right? And I think, I don't know where I heard it or somebody said it, that really brought up for all of us how kind of behind we were in technology, in terms of technology, but not just in the schools, but also at the district level where you have to collect data, et cetera. So it's really pushed, made that something that we really had to address. And I think, Ms. Logan, you really did a great job. You really, this is something that, and I especially like that it's going to stay in-house. There's going to be kind of like a training for, you won't have to keep bringing in experts and paying other people to come in, but it's going to be maintained by the staff in the district. So, I mean, all the things it's going to do, it's staffing, class sizes, keeping track of credentials, all of that. This is pretty great, and coordinated with the County Office of Education as well. So I think this is, a big program, and I think it's gonna help us quite a bit. And so it's almost like out of this virus of having to go to distance learning, it's pushed us into this technology world and high speed. So I'm very impressed, and I really like it. I think it's the good direction to go, and I certainly think we need all of this. We do need this, and thank you very much, Ms. Logan and Dr. Wald and everybody involved with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Lara. Thank you, Ms. Logan and Dr. Wold, for your presentation. I thought it was very informative, and particularly what stood out to me the most was slide 5, I think. It's such a simple slide. I mean, all of them had a lot of information, but I think that the way that you explained the data system and kind of like the dilemma that we have all of this warehouse data essentially. And I remember using Illuminate before as well, and that I guess the limited abilities with that of how to share data, how to actually talk about it meaningfully, how do you disaggregate it and actually look at like, okay, so what does this mean if we compare this pie chart about how many students were, you know, at the level of mastery for a specific district benchmark, you know, for math, for example, and how do you talk about that with parents? And they had some cool ways of using data in the classroom and to be able to share that with families. But I think that what you talked about, the data system having an output that is accessible, that it's easy to find, that can be, you know, forward, like facing the users, facing the community would be key to making data accessible and not kind of like this hidden treasure, you know, that we have to do like a study session to go over this data. It would be more like data as a way of doing business regularly in the district, and data as a part of the language, you know, that we carry on with, like, what is it that we're going to talk about? So it's not like a mystical thing. It's not something that is only made available to a few, but it's actually something that becomes part of the routine conversations that families are able to have, and, you know, in the way that they advocate for their children, and for teachers to be able to have that and be able to speak as clearly as possible on what it is that they're noticing on their sites, and for site leaders to be able to advocate and to really drive forward the change needed at their schools, and just the growth that is already happening in many of them, and to continue to support that and make it go forward. I think that for me, the only thing that stands out more, I mean, I think that people who share public comment with us tonight and share their concerns, and it's I think a continuous argument that we sometimes don't have enough data that's shared. We may have it, but we don't have it in a way that's shareable, in a way that's useful. And I think that we're still in a public health crisis. We're still in distance learning. So while I'm super excited about this data system and I fully support this, I'm just a little bit concerned about the funding for it. And I wanted to get more insight about this and in the CARES Act. And like, for example, what percentage of this implementation of the data systems in West Contra Costa Unified School District is going to be funded through the CARES Act funding, and then, you know, not just the percentage, but what's the actual dollar amount. And I know that we have it in the contracts in C1 as well. There's the information in the larger, the longer the actual contracts, but I wanted to know specifically if it was exactly what's reflected on there, or if there are more costs that are also attached to this.
No, there's no additional cost beyond staff time that's already built into the budget. So it is what we put in the contracts. And again, we put a fail-safe in each thing. When you deal with technology, you don't want to enter into the entire contract initially. You want to make sure that you're down the right pathway and that it's going to work before you throw away $150,000 for a failure. So that's why each of them have a proof of concept before we go. You're approving both phases because we don't want to stop and go back, but we don't move to phase 2 until the proof of concept that yes, you can map it is there. And it is all CARES Act. They're one-time monies that will expire. And that's why we're using them. One-time dollars are supposed to be used for investments that can pay off dividends for a long period. This is probably one of the best uses of those types of dollars to move us forward.
Thank you, Dr. Wolf. So then in total, it would be 279,340?
Correct.
And what percentage of the total CARES Act is that?
Not even 1/2 of 1%. It's a very small percentage of our total CARES Act.
So less than point.
Yeah, less than 1%.
Okay.
A very small number.
And so thank you for explaining that. And so before, not counting on the CARES Act, what was going to be the funding for this prior to COVID? Was there a plan? Because it sounds like it was something that was being worked on for a while, which is great. But I just want to know what was going to be the funding source for this if it wasn't for the CARES Act.
If CARES Act had not been available, as we were closing the books this year, you'll remember that we put in assignments, several sets of dollars, one-time dollars and carryover for very specific priorities. And one of the priorities that we still had was technology. So we had a backup plan there to utilize some of those technology dollars towards this investment as well. So it's always been something that's important to us investing in. And just to the idea of sustainability, you have a commitment. The superintendent started us down this pathway, and Tracy, Marcy from Human Resources, myself, Ruben and Ed Services, we're all lockstep together. All of us on cabinet are going to see this to the end because this is our priority. My first job as a director was an assessment job. So data has always been in my heart.
So then just to clarify it too, and I think I want to make it really clear for the public too. So then there was money that was already used that was set aside for technology, but was used during distance learning before we reached the CARES Act.
Yes.
So moving that to fund this, but it was something that had been allotted to before.
We were always working towards making this happen. Yes.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. Would that be something that can be sent in a Friday memo, just to clarify that, because I want to make sure that that's clear, that we're not taking away funding from the CARES Act, that that we're using it specifically from an amount that was set aside before. Like, I want to make sure that we're really clear about that.
Understood.
Thank you. And that is my final question. I don't know if any other board members have any other final comment or question that they didn't share with them at the beginning. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Ms. Logan. Thank you so much, Dr. Wold. I appreciate the presentation and the explanations as well.
Great. And we look forward to actually revisiting this in a little bit at C1.
Thank you. So that was the last discussion item, E4, data and reporting. F1, action item F1 is the public hearing and approval of resolution number 25/2021, grades transitional kindergarten through 12th grade textbook and instructional materials compliance for fiscal year 2020-2021. So we will open a public hearing.
Yes, good evening, President Hernandez Jarvis and trustees and the community. This is a routine item we do every year to look at our textbook sufficiency. And so we do a public hearing. The attached item there is the resolution that would follow the public hearing. And just to clarify a few points so people understand that this is a very different year in this process. Historically, the Williams audit is also part of this review. The textbook sufficiency, though, is the total district, whereas the Williams is specific schools. With the distance learning format, we can't physically go into classrooms to count textbooks like we've done in the past. So we've had to rely on a form that teachers are submitting, accounting for the instructional materials. The other important item too is that many of our instructional materials have online components, and those online components provide access to our students to those textbooks and the materials needed for those courses.
Thank you, Mr. Aurelio. So the public hearing is open for the textbook and instructional materials compliance for fiscal year 2020-2021, grades TK, transitional kindergarten through 12th grade. So if members of the public would like to speak during this public hearing, please be sure to raise your hand. Mr. Aurelio, do you have any public comment?
We do. I see one hand raised. Petronila Fernandez, I'm going to allow, you are able to unmute now and make your comments.
Good night, everyone, board members.
Them from accessing the school and the curriculum, and that's where we would do the interventions to find out, did their hotspot fail? What services do they need? And schools are doing that outreach to find out.
Okay, and is it students who aren't able to connect? And I don't know how many there are at this point. Like, is that where our largest deficiency potentially is here, or is there somewhere else that we need to be particularly concerned?
Not necessarily. I believe that students who have not been, and I think I don't have that number off the top of my head of who is not connected at this point. We've essentially have accounted for students who to be enrolled in our district, you are connected or you're connecting with the school. And if not, we're trying to find ways to connect you. So I believe that data has been cleaned up at this point as far as who is not present in our system. Then they're technically not enrolled with us at this point.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Trustee Panas. Trustee Phillips?
This question is for Ms. Logan. Ms. Logan, I'm sorry, Mrs. Logan. Does every child or student in our district have internet connectivity?
So I can say with certainty that every student who does not have reliable internet connectivity either has a hotspot from us or is able to get one. As of right now, we still have plenty of inventory of hotspots. So to the best of my knowledge, every student who needs internet connection has internet connection.
So one of the issues that has come up is children in public housing being given hotspots that don't work because of where they are. I think that was an issue with Crescent Park, but do you recall this?
Not this specifically. I do know of, I have been told of a handful of students in the Iron Triangle area who've had connectivity issues with the hotspots. We have been able to swap out in many of those cases a Sprint hotspot for a T-Mobile hotspot, and that has done the trick. But if there are other cases, I don't know about it and I need to know about it.
Okay, what I recall hearing in previous presentations that I believe you were a part of, that we had issues with children who were in public housing and that we were trying different things for them. I think at one point you even said that we were going to try to drive a van in there to see if that worked because the hotspots weren't functional where they lived. So that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about. And so those kids where we were talking about driving a van in there because the hotspots weren't working, what are we doing for those kids? Not that they didn't work, but I think it's because of where they are. So what are we talking? What did we do for those kids? What is the situation for them?
Yeah. So thank you for reminding. So in those cases, we were trying to install what we called super spots, which were those massive hotspots essentially that would provide connectivity to a large number of kids through the walls at one time. That did not work. So instead, what we're doing is providing the individual MiFi hotspots to those students. And they do work because it's one device per student.
Okay, so like those kids where we were talking about public housing, those kids are taken care of now.
Yes, and again, if there are any students out there that you hear of or anyone publicly knows of that still need connection, please let me know so that we can be sure to get them a hotspot. Because as of now, we have provided hotspots to all students that need them, and we still have inventory if there are kids that are having issues.
Okay, do we have children that are enrolled in the district who still have not signed on or signed in?
Nope.
So every single child in this district is signed in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. So we can pull reports, Chromebook reports and reports based on users. And we can tell from a user perspective that all students have signed in.
Okay. And then the children that we had who were missing, are any children still missing?
Now, by missing, I'm not exactly sure what you mean. Are we talking about students at the beginning of the year who we were following up with because they hadn't been attending school? So we were following up to see, did they move? Did they go to charter? Is it internet? That sort of thing?
Yeah, so at the end of last school year, some kids fell off. At the beginning of this year, kids fell off. enrollment was down. Mr. Duffy said it earlier today that attendance is up, which implies to me that it's not back, but it's up. So are there kids who are supposed to be in our schools who are not there still?
So I'll kind of jump in, I think, to help on the answer. Every student that is enrolled, we are able to track them both with attendance engagement, as Ms. Logan stated, and check that they're connecting. So our overall enrollment is lower than it was last year by a group of students. A large percentage of those are kindergarten students that did not enroll, that you project a certain number of kindergartners. And then there's another group in different grade levels that never have attended even one day. These are not the same students we're talking about from the spring. We went and did the outreach and were able to reconnect those students back into the system. These are students that never showed up. And this is not just our issue. Across the state, there is a significant reduction in enrollment in almost every school district where students did not come to school, especially in kindergarten. Kindergarten numbers across the nation are low this year.
So I understand the kindergarten issue, and I appreciate that there's an issue across the state. At this point in my life, that's not really my concern, though. My concern is here. And so the kids who, as you said, who are here, who just never showed up, what is the deal with them? What are we doing about that? And the reason that I'm asking, really, and I'm trying to tie it into the item, right? If we have children who don't have connectivity, who are supposed to be here and they're not, and it's because they don't have connectivity, then I don't understand how we could possibly have proper materials for every child. That's the reason I'm asking. That's why I was asking Ms. Logan. And so if there's a group that has enrolled but has just literally never shown, what's up with those kids?
I think we're saying we don't have a set of kids who have enrolled and never shown. Every kid who's enrolled in the system has been present. Now, some of those may have greater absenteeism than others, and then we go through all our absentee prevention measures and response measures, but we don't have anybody who enrolled and then is on we've contacted everybody and found out, okay, well, certainly as many as we could, why are you not enrolling? We're a kinder, we're not coming in this year. We went to a charter school. We have all of those reasons, but for the kids who are here, I think that's what Ms. Logan and Dr. Wold are saying. We have the data and can track them fairly well. And so then it just becomes a day-to-day or long-term attendance issue.
Okay, because I thought Dr. Wold had said that there was a group of kids who, maybe I heard that wrong, Dr. Wold, but I thought he had just said that there was a new group of kids who just have not shown. I'm actually pretty sure that's what he said, but he might not have meant to say that.
No, I said that our enrollment is lower, and you naturally have students that move and transition each year. So we ended up slightly lower than we were last year, but every student that we've been able to account for is engaged. They do have hotspots. As Ms. Logan said, we've gotten almost 5,000 hotspots now that we're paying for each month for access. And any student that is enrolled, that is present, we are providing them those materials. We look for every student that we thought might have come. We follow up, but we don't have students that registered and then just didn't come. They get tracked and you find out where their exit is and where they went, whether it's a charter, another school, they moved to a different area. So there are no missing students other than there are fewer students. That's a difference. That a missing student is somebody that's sitting in an apartment somewhere that we just don't know is there. We're still tracking anybody that we believe should have been there. There's nobody missing like there was in the spring because we did execute that.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. This is the last comment that I'm going to make on this. So I'm glad to hear that all of the kids who need to be connected have been connected. But there are still issues for some of these children and some of these families to actually be able to, once they have the connection, to actually use the stuff properly. Some kids are working without parents or guardians to be able to help them. Some people have parents and guardians who are able to help them, but it might be a child who's with an 80-year-old grandmother. And so even if a child has the connectivity, which is great, if they can't use it, it's not helpful to them. It allows us to check the box, but it's not helpful. It's kind of like having a car with no gas in it. I have a car, but I can't go anywhere. So I am going to just request two things, and I already have, but one is that we actually create an independent study option, a real independent study option for the families who, for whatever reason, even if they do have the connectivity, it's not working for them. And then the second thing is, and I don't want to sound like a broken clock, but I'm going to sound like that. If those pods are safe, we need to be opening up pods at each one of our school districts sites, and that is 49 sites. I counted them, and if we do up to 90 kids at a pod, that will allow us to have over 4,600 students with in-person help and in-person learning. So I am done. We have an extremely diverse district. We often talk about economic diversity, racial diversity, but right now I want to talk about economic diversity. I like to look at our two extremes. We have Kensington on one end, and we have North Richmond on the other end, and that's in one district. And then you have everybody in between. And when you have a district that's that diverse economically, you have to have options. And that's why I'm asking for us to not just do the distance learning, but to actually have an independent study option for our families, who that is good for. And if it checks out, like Mr. Duffy said, and it's safe, we need to begin opening these pods. And that is my request. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Trustee Phillips, and your requests are noted. Thank you, Dr. Wolf, for answering the questions too. Trustee Lara?
Yeah, I was just thinking, school closed, the buildings closed in the middle of March, and here we are 7 months, and look what you've done, look what's happened in those 7 months. I'm pretty amazed myself. And I think we're doing a great job here. So other than that, I don't have any other comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Lara. I think I had more of a question about how do we measure sufficiency in distance learning? I think you alluded to that in terms of using digital resources and having access to books online. I know that with EPIC, there's been a lot of struggle with accessing content after hours and the limits that are placed for 2 hours beyond 4 p.m. and what it looks like for families to plan how to use those digital resources. So I guess my question is more about how you mentioned that there's something about filling out a form or acknowledging that each teacher is acknowledging that they have the materials their students need. How are we collecting that? I mean, is it that we know that all of the kids know how to access EPIC, that all of the parents are actually accessing it with them, and the language too, Spanish and Mandarin? Because I know that there was more of a limited list for EPIC books in Spanish. So I just want to know the language of instruction. How are we meeting that sufficiency requirement?
So first off, I want to make sure that we're clear that the sufficiency is just the main curricular items, not the supplemental materials. So this process of sufficiency, it doesn't include any of the supplemental. It's strictly our adopted core list. Now, for each teacher, they're signing off on a form that says their students have access the technology component, because we do use online resources, the device, and the materials have been made available to the students. That's what the teachers are attesting to in this document. This document obviously is a new process because of our current environment where we can't physically go into rooms and count textbooks on a shelf like we used to in the past. So that is what's being used. So we're asking the teachers at this point, and then office staff and districts. The secondary is a little trickier, right? The librarians are more involved in that because of the textbook distribution, and they're making sure they're going through and checking off that they've distributed the materials needed for students. But most of our elementary curricular items are online based, so there is that availability for our students.
Thank you for clarifying that, the core curriculum materials versus the supplemental.
Right.
I think that it makes sense. I want to know a little bit more about that too, and maybe that can be further shared out too. I know I'm asking a lot for Friday memos, but I think that there are some gaps in knowledge, that I'm trying to fill about this, because when I think about the actual core curriculum, then, for example, for DLI, for Mandarin or Spanish, what is the actual core curriculum materials that the students are having, for example, for writing workshop?
Right, and I can share with you all sort of the spreadsheet that includes all our adopted materials that account for the list that's included in this.
Great, thank you. And that was not the same list that we saw at one of the previous board meetings, correct? Or was that the same one?
I believe it is the same list. It's what's considered the adopted core materials.
Okay, thank you. So that I can go back and look at that one again. Thank you. That was my last question. And I think a comment related to this a bit is just about the idea of having supplemental materials in addition to the most basic compliant materials that we need to have, or the most basic materials we need to have for compliance for this. I think that we have a lot of books that are sitting in our libraries, and I would like to know more, what's the system that's being developed to have rolling pickup or drive up or walk up services for families to take, a bag with books for their students. And it can be just all books that are, at the grade level, so that kids can have access to that and have them for a week or 2 weeks.
That is a process that is occurring at our sites. They are making those materials available on a weekly, bi-weekly basis. And then I just want to comment briefly. I know Zalon Harrison made a comment about culturally responsive materials and books. And we are, our new director of early literacy and M&M is working with Will McGee, the director of Office of African American Student Achievement, to look at those types of materials. I know at the Pedro Noguera Speak, there was a list of books that he presented about, and we are looking at all those different ways to add to our libraries.
Great, thank you for mentioning that. Thank you. Board, it is 10:27. We have to have a motion for approval of this resolution for the textbook and materials sufficiency. And we have one more quick action item and then 3 consent items that were pulled. So we're gonna need to extend our meeting, I would suggest, by 15 minutes beyond the 10:30, because I want us to make sure that we are finishing at a time that makes sense for us with the business that we have to take care of. So I would like to move to extend the meeting to 10:45.
So moved.
Do you want to second the motion?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Trustee Panas, can we please take a vote?
Panas, yes.
Phillips, yes.
No.
Hernandez Jarvis, yes. Motion passes 3-1 no. Trustee Lara voting no, and Trustee Cuevas absent. Okay, to 10:45. Can we please have a motion, board, if we're done with discussion, or not discussion? Yes, with discussion for this action item, to approve the resolution number 25, 2021. Grace
I'll move
transition
resolution
kindergarten
25.
textbook and instructional.
So moved.
What was that?
I said so moved.
Moved by Trustee Lara. Can you please take a vote?
Panas, yes.
I'm gonna vote no, only because until we have the options that all the kids need, I don't think that it's sufficient.
Lara, yes.
Hernandez Jarvis, yes. Motion passes 3 yeses, 1 no. Trustee Phillips voting no. Trustee Cuevas absent. Thank you, board. The next and last action item is F2, administrative building exterior painting. Mr. Freeze.
Yes, tonight we bring before you an action item for the approval of change order for ProX painting. Pursuant to the board direction, change order is either greater than 10% of the contract value. and or $250,000 would come before the board as an action item. So tonight we're bringing a change order for $5,795, which is exactly 10% of the contract value. And this work was unforeseen work, a crack in the side of the building that had to be filled, and then just painting the flagpole, some of the work that was just missed in the bid documents. So we're asking for approval of this change order tonight.
I'll move approval of change order.
Motion made by Trustee Panas. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Trustee Phillips. Can we please take a vote?
Yes, yes.
Phillips, yes.
Lara, yes.
Hernandez Jarvis, yes. Motion passes unanimously to approve the change order with Trustee Cuevas absent. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Breeze. That was item F2. So now we're going to go back up to our agenda, the 3 consent calendar items that were pulled, C1 first, then C5, and then C6. Trustee Panas, I believe you pulled C1.
Thank you, President Hernandez Jarvis. So Board Bylaw 9322 states that the précis must include a statement as to whether the amount to be spent is in the current budget, and I don't see that for this item. Also, the data insights item indicates it's not in the budget and no account is specified where the funds will be transferred in from. And the same is true for the EYFL consulting contracts. So do we know how these are being funded? They say they're not in the budget and we don't have a place to transfer the money in from.
Mr. Panis, what did you say? Which ones did you say are listed as?
So it's the data insight item indicates it's not in the budget and no account is specified from which the funds will be transferred, and also the EYFL consulting contract and the public profit contract say that they're not in the budget and there's no account.
I apologize on that. They are in the budget from CARES Act. So the data insights is part of the technology piece. It should have had a Y in there. I don't know why it was missed. When we put the account number, that is within CARES Act budget, within the adopted funds there. The second one was which one? Equal opportunity schools.
Yeah.
So this is actually coming from Hewlett funds. So this is one of those, it's in the Hewlett budget. That's from an outside grant there for equal opportunity funds. That's the 9550 resource there. And then the third one was EYFL. And that one also is from CARES Act. They're part of our focus on the data integration piece. This is also indeed, it should have had a Y there. Those are indeed in the CARES Act.
Okay, perhaps,
So
perhaps
that's my oversight there. I don't know why it's not there. It should have been.
That'd be great. If you could document that in the Friday memo, that'd be great.
Absolutely.
Going on, on the Ed Fund Calculus Roundtable contract, there's nothing measurable about the annual measurable outcomes. And on the Equal Opportunity Scholars Project, we are not saying how we're measuring the outcomes. It does not say for the previous year how we built those. And for the young scholars, the AMOs are great. I'm curious to know if they achieved the AMOs for the previous year. But I'd be happy to approve the Equal Opportunity Scholars contract and the Ed Fund contract in 2 weeks when they come back with appropriate AMOs. But I'd like to move that we approve all the C1 contracts except Ed Fund, Calculus Roundtable, and Equal Opportunity Scholar.
Mr. Panis, you said accept Ed Fund?
Except Ed Fund and Equal Opportunity Contract Scholars because they don't have appropriate AMOs.
And the calculus.
Well, Ed Fund, Calculus Roundtable is the same thing.
I'll second your motion.
Trustee Panas, by Trustee Phillips, I'm sorry. Okay, can we please take a vote?
Panis, yes.
Yes, Phillips.
And
yes.
Hernandez Jarvis, yes. Motion passes unanimously with Trustee Cuevas absent to approve all the contracts except for the Ed Fund Calculus Roundtable and the EOS for the 2 contracts to come back to us at the next regular board meeting with the AMOs. Thank you, board. Up next, we have C5, acceptance of agreements for placement of student and or teacher interns. And that was pulled by Trustee Phillips. Trustee Phillips?
Yes, ma'am. I pulled this one just because I wanted an explanation, and I did send an email to staff the last time this item came up. But I want to know, how are we determining where student interns, student teachers are placed? And the reason that I want to know that is because we often have conversations around who teaches in which schools and where the most experienced people are. So I would like to know where these people are going. I know, I'm not saying I don't want to have interns, but I would like to know where they are going and how that is determined. That is why I pulled this. And I did send an email the last time we had this on, but I didn't get a response.
Thank you, Trustee Phillips.
I don't recall seeing that. I'm sorry, I would have responded. Sometimes they approach us and sites, they have people that they know, they have a relationship. Other times, I mean, that's usually the way it usually happens, and relationships that we've had before with other agreements. But I can get more information for you and I can provide it in the Friday letter memo.
That would be fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Thank you, Trustee Phillips. Would you like to make a motion for this item?
Sure, I move that we pass this.
I'll second that.
Second. Panas, can we please take a vote?
Panas, yes.
Phillips, yes.
Lara, yes.
Hernandez Jarvis, yes. Motion passes unanimously with Trustee Cuevas absent to accept the agreements for placement of student and or teacher interns. And Ms. Williams will follow up with more information in the Friday letter. Thank you. So now C6, Apple Technology for Speech with T-Mobile data. Trustee Phillips?
I did pull that one. And the question on that one is, why, or what is the explanation for using the iPads at this one school and everybody else is using Chromebooks?
Sure. So Steege has been an Apple school since 2014. My understanding in 2014, there was an opportunity through Connect Ed for Steege to essentially get an infrastructure upgrade and iPads and become an Apple school. And it meant that not only did they get the devices, but they also had the opportunity to get the professional development from Apple. So since that time, the school has really invested in that particular technology, the way in which it's been used with teachers, and it's something that has helped define who they are and their culture. In speaking with Ms. Ruiz and the teachers, it is something that they want to continue with. They believe that the iPads for students really helps with creativity, critical thinking skills, and the different applications that they're able to use with the iPads. And as we look to differentiate Steege as a school of choice for students, having technology that sets them apart really just helps them in furthering that vision and that commitment to being critical thinkers and creative innovators.
So I know what I'm about to say is going to sound a little crass, but you're saying that they've had this special technology for 6 years. How has it made a difference? I mean, because you're asking us to approve funds above what would happen somewhere else, but you're also telling us that they've had this since 2014, and you're giving me like anecdotal information about why people think this is helpful, but I haven't really seen how this affects the bottom line of student performance at that school. Not that it's not cool and not that people don't like it, but how has this actually translated into the children at Steege performing better? Because that has not happened since I've been on the board. So I'm can help me.
Sure. So maybe I can add some, and then Mr. Aurelio, if you want to add as well. I mean, I would also say from a cost perspective, Mr. Phillips, that there's not much of a cost difference. So what we're spending for Stige is similar to what we're spending at the other schools. So it's not as if we are investing additional resources. We are in fact essentially spending the same, and because then these are Wi-Fi enabled, that means we're not spending for hotspots. So that's one piece. Ruben, I don't know if you want to weigh in terms of the academic program.
Definitely, and I know we did not have necessarily data from SBAC from last year, but Stige was 2 years ago identified as a CSI school, and they actually came off the CSI list over the past, I guess it'd be 18-19 was the last time we had SBAC data. So they did make improvement. During your time here, Mr. Phillips, they have improved academically. Obviously, they have a long way to go, and they still need to continue to improve. And we spent last year working on a redesign plan programmatically that does include the use of the iPads as part of the portfolio process they want to do with students. They're going to be using this technology embedded in the work that they're doing in their vision for their school. But they did come out of the red based on the dashboard color coding system over the past year and a half.
Okay, looks like I have some digging that I need to do, but you're saying that this is not an additional cost above and beyond what it would be at another school?
No, it's basically the same cost.
The reason it's on a board agenda is because of bid limits. You have to, at a certain level, you have to have approval for buying any type of product. So normally you wouldn't have even seen something because it'd be part of our normal Chromebook contract. This is a different technology. That's why you see it in isolation, even though it's really just the normal process.
Okay. I will move the item.
I'll second it, but I also have one question. I'm just wondering, do we have any of our standard software or systems that work on Windows or our Chromebooks and that but can't be used on the Apple hardware?
No, all of the core curriculum certainly is used on the iPads. We use Jamf as our MDMs, and we can push software to the iPads. All of the Google Suite has all of the tools available there. So no, it's essentially the same, and we make sure software-wise that the iPads have the same compatibility as the Chromebooks do.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me.
Trustee Phillips?
Yeah, so I am really glad to hear that things are turning around at Stige, and there was a big investment in that school. And so I'm sure that I offended somebody tonight, and I do apologize for that. And I would actually like a presentation to the board about what has happened at Stige and what was the outcome of the investments that were made. So we can talk, and Mr. Aurelio, you can unpack what those improvements are, because I think everyone would love to hear that.
Definitely, we'll work on that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Phillips. So that Trustee Phillips, so that is something to note, and that we can have a conversation about at agenda setting as well. So there was a motion made by Trustee Phillips, seconded by Trustee Panas, correct?
Yes.
Can we please take a vote?
Panis, yes.
Lara, yes.
Phillips, yes.
Hernandez, Jarvis, yes. Motion passes unanimously with Trustee Phillips absent to approve item C6. Apple Technology with T-Mobile data.
And President Hernandez Jarvis,
Trustee Phillips?
just really quick, I mean, I may be in the wrong place, but I just looked up the CSI list in 1819, and Stige is on there. So I'm not sure what Mr. Aurelio was talking about, but it's on there. I'm looking at it right now. But anyway, the item passed, and I would love to hear the presentation.
Thank you, Trustee Phillips. So the last thing that we have now, board members, is comments from Board of Education and future agenda items. We have a minute, so if we could make them succinct so all of us can say our remarks before we go. Thank you.
I'll say I enjoyed the last day of the UC Berkeley Grading for Equity training that we had a couple weeks ago, and a couple of our staff members were there, and there's one coming up in our own PD, I think in the next week. Had a great time at the Spectrum of Community Engagement seminar last week, hosted by the City of Richmond, Healthy Richmond. And last Saturday was virtual Black Lives Matter flag raising in Surrey. And that's it.
Thank you, Trustee Panas. Trustee Phillips?
I don't have any comments for this evening. I probably spoke enough, so you all have a good night. Oh, you know what? In case my kids are still watching, because good night, everybody. I love you guys, and I will talk to you in a few minutes. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Trustee Phillips. Trustee Lara?
No, I don't have any comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Trustee Lara. I just want to remind everybody to please continue to do your part to continue to observe the social distancing guidelines, wearing our masks, washing our hands, social distancing, and supporting each other as we continue in distance learning and to adjust to all of the changes and supporting our kids first and foremost, putting them at the front and center of everything we do. So thank you all. Have a great night. Thank you, staff. Thank you, board members. Thank you, Mr. Duffy. Thank you to every community member who participated and who watched from home as well. I hope you're all well and take care. Have a great week. Thank you.